Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial #law, that is #529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. Good morning from below. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Hoops Peterson, now part of the Easton Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Mid-Major Matt, a.k.a. Matt Josephs. Actually, it's the other way around. Matt Josephs, a.k.a. Mid-Major Matt. However you want to look at it, I know him as Mid-Major Matt. He does great work over at FTN Network, FTN Bets, and he does an incredible job with his ESPN radio show out there in Richmond, Virginia as well. And we're going to be chatting about what we've seen the last few weeks in college basketball. Going to talk quite a bit about the SEC's dominance. We're going to take a look at the Atlantic 10, how intriguing that conference has been. Dive in on a few games that we've got for Tuesday as well. And we're also going to talk about how you want to just be devaluing home court advantage just a little bit for the next week or two, with so many kids being on winter break, with there being less of a student body that is on campus as of right now. And then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to fire those in. First one is my Twitter /X timeline at @UNN_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, the mean does not matter. So per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter /X questions today, but we had a great day of college basketball on Monday. Let's take a look back at it. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
We were supposed to get a day game between Southeast Louisiana versus Grambling. Apparently, the schedule makers did us wrong, but we did get the game, and we did get Southeast Louisiana to be able to get the job done by kind of 75-65 over Grambling. The Grambling team has been a pretty solid cover team to begin the season as well. Now 5-2 against the spread, but for Southeast Louisiana, 8 of 20 from three-point range. Grambling continues to be a really good three-point shooting team, by the way. 7 of 16 from three-point range. They only committed 6 turnovers in this game to the 16 of Southeast Louisiana. Here's where they lost the game, though. Grambling got out-rebounded 35-14. Like, you just don't find that very often. As for Southeast Louisiana, 4 of their 5 starters, they were able to give you double figures. So Southeast Louisiana on the glass, they get the job done. And Grand Canyon, well, they have not been getting the job done. Grand Canyon has not been one of your better cover teams in all of college basketball thus far this season, as it was Louisiana Tech who got it done this by kind of 74-66. And I believe that Louisiana Tech has covered all but 2 of their games thus far this season as well. They've been a nice cover machine for you, as for Southeast Louisiana as well, going back to them. 7-2-1 against the spread. Louisiana Tech 7-2-1 against the spread. So the 2 Louisiana schools have been covering a lot of numbers, but for Louisiana Tech, they go 7-20 from three-point range. The Bacho man, Daniel Bacho, 19 points, 3 blocks. Sean Newman, he was able to put in there 25 points, 9 assists. Did have 6 turnovers for Grand Canyon. They won the turnover battle 13-12. They win the rebound battle 35-34, but they went just 6 of 27 from three-point range in this one, as Ty and Graham Foster 3 more points than myself, so that was a little bit less than savory for them. Really didn't have any ranked teams in action. Your best team was Texas Tech, and they just completely blowtorched Oral Roberts, 86-50 the final. It has been a bit of a rough season for Oral Roberts, to say the least, as for Oral Roberts, they went a nice hearty 34% from the floor and 7-25 from 3. Meanwhile, for Texas Tech, still dealing with the JT Toppin injury. No issue in this one. They go just 10-29 from three-point range, but Frederico, so nice they named him twice a double-double. 23 points, 12 rebounds, 11 of 13 from the floor, so good domination there for UTEP. They have been a pretty solid team to begin the season, but no cover on this day, as they win but do not cover against Tarleton State, 67-62 the final. Is for Tarleton State, they only got out 40 shot attempts because they turned the ball over 18 times, but they went 10 of 20 from the floor. And for UTEP, 23 out of 33 at the free throw line. Is you did have in this one Otis Frazier go 10 of 10 at the charity stripe, 18 points, but spirited effort from a Tarleton State team has been rough thus far this season. What else has been rough is trying to get covers out of TCU, as they win but do not cover against South Alabama by a count of 58-49 for TCU, just 2-8 against the spread thus far this season. So that has very much been less than savory. And with regards to this TCU unit, they did have Sean Alouette be able to supply the team with 14 points, but they go 5 of 26 from 3. South Alabama not a whole lot better at 7 of 26 from 3-point range, but South Alabama, they did lose a rebound battle by a count of 40-30 as Ernest Uday, a double-double, 10 points, 11 rebounds, and another team has been pretty rough against the spread. That'd be Cal Baptist, as they're 3-8 against the spread, and Middle Tennessee got the cover against them, 75-64. The final for Cal Baptist. They go just 4 of 24 from 3-point range. They lose the rebound battle by a count of 44-41. They did commit just 7 turnovers in this game, and they had Dominique Daniels go off for 20 points, but 30 points off the bench from Cameron Weston for Middle Tennessee. That turned out to be the difference, as they do find a way to persevere, and they do get the job done in that one. Also being able to get the job done. How about Southern Utah with the cover? They don't get the outright win, but New Mexico State has been another team that has been relatively rough against the spread thus far this season, at 3-7 now against the spread, 72-69. Southern Utah finds a way to get within the number, as for this New Mexico State team, they go 6 of 17 from 3-point range, just close right around 5 to 5.5, by the way. But that said, you did have 19 points out of Christian Cook, and for the Southern Utah team, Jamar Simpson has been the main star for them. Just 3 of 15 from the floor, 12 points, as the other guys were able to pick them up, keep them lively in this one. Reason why Southern Utah loses this game straight up, though, they do lose that rebound battle by a count of 34-26. By the way, Utah Tech finding this very hilarious. They were playing out of the D3 ranks Whittier College, and they are the Whittier Poets. So they literally played a bunch of Division III poets. So that's the sort of night that you had in college basketball on Monday. And then on Monday as well, Northern Colorado, they fall to 3-6 against the spread as well. Had a 16-plus point lead against Air Force. If you like me, bet on Northern Colorado on this one. Pretty brutal, as for Northern Colorado, they win by a count of 81-76. They got outscored by double figures in the second half. As for Air Force, they cover this game despite going 1 of 18 from 3 and 19 out of 33 at the free throw line, as it was a career night. 23 points for the freshman and Kyle Marshall for Air Force. They also did a solid job winning that turnover battle by a count of 13-6, but got bludgeoned on the glass. They lost that battle 39-23, with Langston Reynolds being able to supply 23 points, 11 rebounds for Northern Colorado. And Alcorn State, all of a sudden, starting to cover some numbers after a really rough start to the season. They hang in there against Rice Squalls, 77-75 final in that one. So we did see some interesting college basketball. And then you also saw Charleston be able to get a win and cover as well, as they do take down Wofford. This by a count of 77-67 for this Charleston team. They're now 7-2 against the spread, and they were able to go 12 of 24 from 3-point range. They put up 77 points despite having a 6-minute drought at the end of the first half, by the way, as Ante Brizovic, 21 points, 5 blocks, 6 assists, 7 rebounds for Wofford. They actually won the rebound battle by a count of 48-36, but just couldn't throw it in there from 3-point range. 8 of 37 from 3-point range. And if you're looking overall at what we're seeing in college basketball right now, it has been an overwhelming season to this point. 865 overs to 852 under, so a 50.4% hit rate to the over, and the underdogs continue to bark. 879, 837, and 26 against the spread. So underdogs sitting at a clip of about 51.2% thus far this season. But if you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, it's been the favorites who have been able to rise up. 93, 89, and 3 against the spread, with overs and unders about as equal as it gets. 90 overs to 91 under. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Monday. Now let's take a look at what we've got on tap for Tuesday. Let's take a look at what we've been seeing in general in college basketball over the last few weeks, and so much more with our good friend Matt Joseph, aka Major Matt, right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Houston Family Podcast. We're back in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Easton Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, as Matt Josephs. You know him better as been Major Matt. He does a tremendous job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. On top of that, in terms of college sports, does a great job on the college football front as well. He's over there at FTN Network, FTN Bets, doing an amazing job there. On top of that, his show Border to Border out there at ESPN Radio in Richmond, also tremendous. You're able to follow him on Twitter /X at Major Matt. All together, Matt, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Yes, always a pleasure to join you, and happy holidays to you as well.
Happy holidays to you and happy holidays to us as college basketball fans as we've got ourselves some great action that's going to be happening over the next few weeks. And want to get your thoughts first things first on what we've all seen over the last few weeks because I feel like ever since we've come out of these Feast Week tournaments, the cream has been rising to the top. And by that, I mean the cream rising to the top being that the SEC is just taking over college basketball.
Even though they lost at Duke, I still think Auburn's probably the best team in the country. And then you've got Tennessee and Florida, who are both sitting there at 10-0. Alabama's at 8-2, Kentucky's at 10-1. It's pretty impressive when you look at the Ken Palm top 20 and you see so many SEC schools, and ironically also a lot of Big 12 and Big 10 in there as well. But yeah, the SEC has certainly dominated. I always love betting those props come March for the NCAA tournament, over-unders for the conferences. I have a feeling the SEC's conference number is going to be like 14 or 15 or maybe even 16 or 17, depending upon how many they get in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's going to be incredible what we see out of the SEC for this upcoming March Madness. But on top of that, I know that in your neck of the woods, there's a lot of A10 chatter because you're out there in Richmond, Virginia, obviously with the Spiders, with the VC Rams. What have you seen out of the Atlantic 10 this year? Because that's the one conference I look at that I don't feel like it's getting enough love because while Dayton is able to get that big win over Marquette, it's much more than just them as well as we've been able to see a team like a Rhode Island really be able to rise up this season.
Yeah, I don't know too much about Rhode Island in terms of how good they are. Obviously, I don't think they're 10-1 good. I mean, look, outside of the win over Providence, they've had a lot of home games and a lot of teams who aren't very good. The loss to Brown right after the win to Providence, that didn't look very good. And it's not like we're going to see very much from Rhode Island the rest of the year. They're going to play Temple in a neutral court game and then Duquesne as their first A10 road game. We know how bad Duquesne is. So I'm not necessarily a believer yet in Rhode Island. I'm more of a believer in Loyola. I'm certainly a believer in VCU. We'll see how they do in the pit on Wednesday. Dayton getting the very nice win over Marquette at home. St. Bonaventure has been a bit of a surprise, but we know Mark Schmidt is a tremendous coach. So there are some good teams and some good records. Some I believe in. I also probably don't believe in GW yet at 9-2, but it's better to be 9-2 than 2-9. That's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a rock solid year out there for the Atlantic 10, and I think that there's going to be some put up or shut up games that are going to be coming for them as well. As joining me on the show, we do have mid-major Matt, aka Matt Josephs. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and ironically enough on Tuesday, big step up spot here for George Mason. Obviously, an outright win, I think, would be a little bit unexpected, but they go on the road against Duke. Just what have you seen out of this George Mason team? A team that's sitting here at 7-3, had a little bit of a rough loss earlier in the season against East Carolina. I remember that game went to double overtime, and ever since then, they've been able to bounce back pretty nicely, albeit against some outgunned competition.
Very senior laden, and they play good defense. I mean, look, when you see their top 10 in 2-point percentage defense and top 20 in 3-point percentage defense, it's going to keep you in a lot of games. Now, the one thing that's been an issue for them is their turnovers. They turn the ball over way too much. You saw that in the Marquette game. That's why they lost that game. You mentioned the Central Michigan game. I mean, they've taken care of business. The win at JMU is a very impressive one. That's a rivalry that used to be played a lot more, and they're hoping to get that thing going a little bit more. So if they can play a little bit of defense and maybe slow Duke down just a little bit, I mean, maybe they have a chance to cover that number, but you're correct. I mean, they're not going to go to Cameron and win that game. But the other thing that's been really interesting for George Mason is their free throws attempted per field goals attempted number is really high. Now, we know they're not going to get many foul calls in Cameron, but that's something that's going to help you because if you can get to the free throw line in any game and they're a pretty good free throw shooting team, that's going to help you close gaps if you're losing and help cement victories if you're winning.
Yep, absolutely. I think that is going to be so important. And just how do you weight that with regards to your handicapping? Because I always think that it's very interesting when you get those matchups between a team that's like one of the best at not fouling in all of college basketball versus a team that very much relies upon being able to get to the free throw line for their points. And I always think that those are some of the most tricky games to handicap because when you do have a disciplined team, I always do default a little bit more to them rather than the team that has, shall we say, a higher frequency of getting to the free throw line and relies a little bit more on those free throws for their scoring.
Well, I mean, the perfect team that you kind of encapsulate with part of this is Abilene Christian. Year after year, they used to be that team that forces a ton of turnovers, but when they don't turn you over, they end up fouling you. And once again, this is another year. They're top 50-ish in turnover percentage on defense, but they're 362nd in free throws attempted per field goals attempted. And it's kind of the system that Brett Tanner has put in there because they've been like that for years, always really really good at turning the ball over, and then if you beat them, they're going to foul you. So it's one of those things where you can have some sneaky, overs, because their offense is not great and their defense struggles a little bit. But if they're going to send teams to the free throw line, that's free points that you're getting without the clock moving.
Yep, absolutely. Always an interesting team to take a look at. And with Abilene Christian, Steve Austin, those are some teams that I think have some of the most volatility in college basketball as well. Either they win some of these games outright, where you remember Steve Austin actually went to Cameron Indoor a few years ago, won that game outright, and sometimes you take 5 points with them and they lose by, shall we say, 35 points. As joining me on the show, we do have Matt Josephs, Mid-Major Matt, joining me right here on Cusco Soups. And I know that you, Matt, do a tremendous job looking at these mid-major schools, and I want to get your thoughts on what we've seen in terms of some of these smaller conferences, because I feel like it's much more wide open at a lot of these conferences than we expected. I was expecting a little bit more out of Grand Canyon. Colgate and Vermont, two teams that squared off for the weekend, they seem way down this year, and a lot of these conferences that we thought that it was going to be the same old, it might not be that this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, Grand Canyon, with bringing back almost the whole roster, it feels like, and adding some key pieces. Like, you thought that Grand Canyon was going to be really good, and to see them lose to UC Davis at home, that was kind of disappointing. And to see them kind of not play as well, and obviously as we do this, they're playing their game against Louisiana Tech, and it's been a close game back and forth, and would be a very nice win for them on the road, but we expected so much more from them, and we'll see what they do on Sunday when they get to host St. Louis, a team who's been very disappointing. And yeah, when you see the Vermonts that are struggling a little bit, Colgate at some point eventually, they had all those shooters, you knew eventually that wasn't going to work. So there are those teams that are down, but Furman's 10-1, UC Santa Barbara 7-3, North Dakota State 10-4. These are traditional powers who are doing pretty well so far at the start of the season.
Yep, absolutely. It has been incredible what we've been seeing out of some of these mid-majors. And for UC Irvine, they have been looking rock solid out there in the Big West. And that entire Big West, I think, is very interesting, because there's going to be a big-time step-up game on Tuesday for UC San Diego. Right now, we find them as about 8.5-point underdogs against Utah State. And UC Irvine, I think, is by far the creme de la creme in that conference. But seems like Santa Barbara is back. They had a big second half against UW Green Bay a few days ago. And that, I think, is a mid-major conference worth watching, because whoever gets that bid out of the Big West, I think they could be a team that could be very dangerous in March.
Yeah, Hawaii's usually pretty sneaky too, and obviously getting Tanner Christensen, who was such a good player at Utah Tech. I mean, that's a really nice piece for Hawaii to have. I think that, and also always the dynamic of making the trip out to the islands, that always kind of messes some people up. Northridge has done pretty well so far this season, 7-3, and UC Davis has one of the best players in the conference, Ty Johnson. They're at 6-4. So yeah, that should be a really fun conference tournament, and certainly a really fun conference to see, especially because you're going to have some of those weekends where teams are just going to have back-to-backs against really tough squads.
Yeah, but absolutely. I am very much looking forward to what we're going to be getting in the rest of that conference throughout the season, and that's going to be one that I'm going to be checking in on throughout, as Matt Josephs, aka Mid-Major Matt, he is joining me right here on Cusco Soups, and we're doing this ahead of the Tuesday action. And I know that you're out there sort of in that, shall we say, southeast part of the country, and this is going to be a fun game to be taking a look at with that North Carolina versus Florida game. That's actually going to be a neutral court game, but technically in the state of North Carolina. What do you make of the Tar Heels being about a 4 to a 4.5-point underdog? Because I think it's fair to say that they've been one of the bigger disappointments in all of college basketball. Florida, I thought that they were going to be better this year. It has been incredible what we've seen out of them, scandal or not. They have just won every single game, and they've looked impressive in doing so.
Yeah, I mean, it's their defense. It's what it's always been for North Carolina. It's when they don't play defense, they're just not a good enough team. I mean, they give up 92 to Kansas, 94 to Michigan State, 94 to Alabama, 85 to Auburn. They gave up 90 to Dayton in a neutral court game, even in a victory. So, if they're not playing any defense, their offense is good. It's not the North Carolina offenses of the past. And so basically, are they going to show up defensively against Florida? Is this team going to try hard, or are they just going to try and outscore everybody? And so, this is not going to be in Chapel Hill, as you said. And so that makes a little bit of a difference here. I certainly agree with the line here. I think you can't trust this North Carolina team outside their gymnasium especially against an offense that has any sort of pulse.
Yeah, it's been incredible what we've been seeing out of this Florida team thus far this season. And to your point about North Carolina, actually played some solid defense last year. We've seen a departure to that, and RJ Davis right now shooting 25% from three-point range. He's going to need to pick that up a little bit as well. And Matt, when it comes to the entirety of the slate for Tuesday, are there any games that are really catching your attention? Because this is sort of a something for everyone sort of night. We've got a few neutral court games. We've actually got some conference play involving Metro Atlantic teams as well. We've got some bye games scores are going down. Anything that is really standing out to you?
I'll talk about the JMU Wake Forest game. I mean, Wake Forest, it's stunning to see them so low in the 3-point land because this is a team that last year they lived by the 3-pointer. They were so good for shooting the three. And with a lot of those guys back, you would have expected better numbers here. But you're going up against a JMU team that I feel like at their best, they could beat almost anybody. But the problem is getting some sort of consistency. You look at their schedule so far, you almost see the win, loss. And that's not how you're supposed to be this season. But they've got a really good offense. And Preston Spradlin's defense is certainly going to make things tough for any sort of opponents. And I'm also looking around this time, every time that we kind of, hit this holiday season, you have to look at lesser crowds. There's lesser home court advantage going on right now in college basketball because, students either on campus and studying or they're not on campus, and then you're relying on the adults, and that sometimes doesn't work out. I also want to see what Dayton does. I mean, Dayton is coming off of a huge win over Marquette at home, an emotional win over Marquette at home, and now you've got UNLV coming to your building on Tuesday night, and then you've got the road game against, well, it's not really a road game, but you're playing Cincinnati in an in-state rivalry kind of game. This is kind of the sandwich here. Now, obviously, UNLV is traveling to Ohio for this game, and they've been really inconsistent so far this season, but if Dayton's not 100% focused for this game, I think UNLV can certainly make things interesting. Some other road teams that might be interesting, I mean, Florida International, they've kept things close on the road so far this season. I'm kind of looking for these road teams that are good, not great, but also going up against home teams that I feel like we're getting priced at, hey, full arena, full crowds, full student sections. I just don't think we're going to have as much nowadays because of the winter break.
Yep, absolutely. I think that is something that is so key to be taking a look at this time of year as well, because a lot of people always like to award a boilerplate like 3 points for home court advantage, whether that be a big conference matchup, whether that be this time of year, what have you. And I feel like you need to sort of have a little bit of a moving target with regards to how you price out home court advantage. So very well said there, Matt. And Matt, I know you're doing an amazing job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. You're dialing it up, whether that be the power conference teams or the mid-majors. Love the good people at home. Know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, at Mid-Major Matt on Twitter, and certainly you mentioned it, a radio show here in Richmond. It's certainly a good one, and we do one on JMU as well, where we interview players and coaches on campus involving their local sports. So that's certainly something to check out. And as I always like to say, we all have the same goal. We all want to beat the book. So tweet me and ask me whatever Greg may not be able to answer.
Absolutely. And Matt, he does such an amazing job taking a look at this great game of college basketball. And every single time he joins me, lends such tremendous insight. So big thanks to Matt for joining me on Custom Soups, now part of the VSiN family podcast. And coming up next, it's that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. It is always great to be able to give Mid-Major Matt, a.k.a. Matt Josephs, aboard. He does such an amazing job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insights. Did so once again today. So big thanks to Matt for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @unit_D1. Going to be going in the Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games in bigger conferences first, pretty much in time order, and then here are the games that are going to be at the bottom. The games involving the SWAC, the MEAC, the Atlantic Sun, the Southland, the Northeast Conference, the Patriot League, the Big South, if I haven't said so already. I don't think I said the Northeast Conference, but if I haven't already said it, the Northeast Conference as well. So how about if we do get things started with a game that I will be writing up, 601, 602 on the card. You've got DePaul, and they're on the road against St. John's. The Red Storm do find themselves as 13 to 13.5 point favorites. Total on this game, going to be getting that between a 150 to a 150.5, and a game that I'm going to be writing up with regards to the points for DePaul. I set my line at 8.5. For DePaul, I just feel like they're getting a little bit disrespected right now because of the name of DePaul and the fact that they have been complete garbage over the last few decades. And for DePaul, they've been able to turn things around. They're a top 30 team in terms of their three-point shooting percentage, going against the St. John's unit that's outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Now, for St. John's, they've been much better at home rather than on the road. And for DePaul, they've had their struggles when they've been away from home. But I do think that the combination of Isaiah Rivera along with Jake Meyer will be able to combine for about 20.5 points per game. They're going to be rock solid in this one. And then you've got a really good facilitator in Connor Enright, who's able to supply the team with 7.5 assists per game. He actually gives out more assists than he does points. And for St. John's, you do have to feel like this backcourt is going to be able to get better and better as the season goes along. As for St. John's, it's been a pedestrian three-point shooting effort with about 12.5 turnovers per game. But you do have yourself a guy in Davion Smith who's able to be a guy that's able to take over the game. 9.5 points, 6 boards, 5 assists. I would consider him to be the better three-point shooter of he and Karari Richmond, but Richmond a little bit more versatile. 5 boards, 5 assists, 10.5 points per game, and then it's been all about RJ Lewis. How he's been able to supply the offense with 17 points. Does a good job of being able to grab boards. He gives out 3 assists per game as well. But with the St. John's team, each of your top 4 scorers all shooting below 31% from 3. Think that there should be some positivity there, which is why I'm in on the over. Set my total 154.5. Have a DePaul team that's playing a little bit more up-tempo. Have a St. John's team that I think is doing for some positivity there. But with Zuby Ejiofor, should be able to control things down low. Able to give the team 7.5 rebounds per game. But with the way that David Skogman gives you good versatility at 6'11", he last year shot 47% from 3. This year he's shooting 48% from 3. I do think that DePaul going to cause St. John's quite a few issues. Though St. John's pretty good at generating turnovers. DePaul, they do turn the ball over about 13 times per contest. So St. John's should be able to get the job done. But double figures has went too far. I'm going to be writing up the points with DePaul, and I'm in on the over. 603, 604 on the betting board. North Carolina A&T plays Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina is a underdog of 2.5 points total on this game. It is between 146.5 to a 147.5. I'll be in on this total under. I set my total 144.5. You have a Coastal Carolina team that's really slowed things down to a crawl this year in terms of total possessions per game. Coastal Carolina, right now, they are well outside the top 300 with that regard, so that's been interesting. As a matter of fact, 349th. North Carolina A&T looking to fly a little bit more. North Carolina A&T has been very clean with their offense. Last year, they were a top 25 team in terms of total possessions per game without a turnover, so they did a nice job being able to keep things clean. They've been turning the ball over a little bit more this year, but still relatively rock solid. And then you've got 2 nice go-to scorers. That'd be Brian Forrest along with Landon Glasper. These 2 guys are combining for about 37.5 points, 7.5 boards per game, with both of these guys being able to combine for about 3 steals per game. They both shoot in the mid-30s from 3-point range. Now, I did set my line at 2.5 as well, so waiting on a little bit of line movement here. I was seeing a little bit earlier in the day there was a straight 2 or so out there, and if we can get down to a 2, would be willing to lay it. As Coastal Carolina, I think is going to be able to do a solid job down low. You've got Nicolas Chidakoutis, who's been able to do a solid job for North Carolina A&T. Comes in from Greece. He's been able to give the team 8 boards per contest, but I do think that Noah Ammenhauser, the 7'2" big man that began his career over at Grand Canyon, he should be able to win the day down low. He's been able to give the team 6.5 boards. Not necessarily too much of a shot blocker, but that's been coming along with his game. He's been able to improve as the season has went along, but for Coastal Carolina, Rasheed Jones, he's been able to supply the team with 13 points. Done a nice job leading the way with 2.5 assists per game. Currently shooting 50.5% from 3, and as a team, got Coastal Carolina currently shooting 38% from the outside. Do think that that's going to be going downward just a little bit as they don't necessarily attempt a lot of threes, but Henry Abraham has been able to shoot about 39% from 3-point range. You've been able to get 39% three-point shooting out of Andre Melbia as well. These 2 guys have been able to supply the team with a combined about 8.5 points per game, but I do think that for North Carolina A&T, they're going to be able to find a way with their top flight guys to be able to get the job done, along Cayman Shell being the best facilitator out there on the floor. 4 assists, fewer than 2 turnovers per game, and you've been able to get some nice ancillary scoring out of Jonathan Lamothi, who's been able to come in, give the team 3 assists, 6 boards, 12.5 points per game. I do think that versatility, a little bit too much though. Coastal Carolina, I think that they get their relatively slow, grimy style. This has been a unit that has given up fewer than 60 points in 3 of their last 4 games, while A&T is on a 6-game losing streak. They've been able to play quite competitively with some relatively good teams as well, going on the road, hanging within single digits against Liberty most recently. So, going to be willing to lay up to 2 points with North Carolina A&T, 3 or more taking the points with Coastal Carolina, and with regards to the total, in on the under. 605, 606 on the betting board. It is Marist, and they are on the road. They're facing off against Stony Brook. Stony Brook, a 1.5 point home underdog. Your total on this game between 134 to 134.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with Marist. Did set them as a 3-point favorite. Marist, traditionally a very slow and controlled team. And last year, Marist was one of the best defenses in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. We've seen quite a bit of a departure there, and we've also seen quite a bit of a departure with regards to Stony Brook and what they've been able to do as well. Certainly, Marist still the better defense in this one. For Marist, about 132nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Stony Brook, 347th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. At home specifically, they're in the bottom 20 in the nation as well, so that has been very much less than savory. And for Marist, they are able to knock down a few threes. They're not going to get out of sorts with regards to their tempo or anything like that, but they do find themselves some just nice shots with regards to their system in general, as Josh Passarelli is currently shooting 47% from the outside. He's supplying the team with 18.5 points, 2.5 assists per game. You've been able to get 8 points, 3.5 assists, 5 rebounds out of Jaden Collins as well. Good versatility on that front. And for Stony Brook, CJ Luster has been able to do a nice job hitting about 40% of his threes from the outside, 14 points per game. And Joe Octave is a little bit of a do-it-all guy, 13.5 points, 5 boards. But I mean, this is a Stony Brook team that after they were the best cover team in all of college basketball last season, lost pretty much 5 out of their top 6 scorers. Lone guy that returns is Andre 3000 Sadi, who's been versatile, 7 points, 6.5 boards at 6'6", currently shooting 42% from 3-point range. But for Stony Brook, even with their slow style, 12.5 turnovers per game, just not necessarily cutting it. We expected a little bit more down low out of Ben White, 9 points, 5 boards. I remember he was rock solid at William & Mary, and I do think that the pieces are going to start to come together for this team, but you're noticing that Marist is starting to rise up with their defense as well. 62 points or fewer allowed in 3 out of their last 5 games. It has been a Stony Brook team that has just really hit the skids with their offense. Their game against Rider, they were able to break through. They got 72 points in that one, but that was the first time that they scored north of 66 points against a Division I opponent since their second game of the season. So it's a good old situation of something's got to give. I did set my total at 131. This has been a Stony Brook team that just year in and year out has been relatively slow and controlled. I think that they're going to have a tough time breaking through this Marist team that has been able to do a nice job of guarding the interior for Stony Brook. I do think that they're going to have some issues as well with a Marist team that they do a relatively nice job of just being able to switch, of being able to slow games down as well. And I do think that Marist, after their first few games of the season, were a little bit more up-tempo. They're getting back to that slow and controlled style that we saw last season. So did set my total 131. I am in on this total under, and I'm willing to lay up to 2.5 points with Marist. 607, 608 on the bang board. Clemson is on the road against South Carolina. South Kakalaki, a 1.5 point home underdog. Throwing this game between 134.5 to a 135. Set my line at 3.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with Clemson. I really like what I'm seeing out of this Clemson team right now. And for South Carolina, out of the 16 teams in the SEC, I right now think that they might be number 16. This is despite the fact that Colin Murray-Boyles has been really good for them. 16 points, 9.5 boards. He gives you a block. He gives you a steal per game. But Ian Shefflin is one of the best rebounders in all of college basketball. As a matter of fact, he is third in the nation in rebounds, and he's versatile. 13 points, 12 boards, 3.5 assists. Last year shot 47% for 3. This year popping in at more like 28.5% from the outside. But I mean, this man has had in his last 3 games a combined 39 rebounds. He's had 13 plus boards in 4 out of the team's last 5 games. He has been absolutely dominant down low. And then you got Jace Hunter, who's been able to supply the team with 16 points per game. Now, I recognize that a lot of Clemson's success has come at Little John, and for that I say yeah, but for Hunter, he's been able to do a nice job being able to shoot about 37.5% from 3-point range. Doesn't get out of sorts with the ball. He's been shooting 39% from 3-point range in the games played away from home. And Wacky Zaki has been a really nice facilitator for the team as well. Not been as much of a scorer as he was over at Boston College, but 9 points, 3 assists, 2 steals per contest. Team has only turned the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. And for South Carolina, you just don't have that same level of guard play with them. You've been able to get a double-figure amount of points out of Jamari Thomas, who comes on over from Norfolk State, now shooting about 39% from 3-point range. And you got 38% 3-point shooter in Jacoby. I always like to call him Scooby Wright, who's been able to give you 10.5 points per game for South Carolina. They're keeping things relatively clean with regards to turning the ball over about 11 times per contest. They've been looking to slow things down. They, over the last few seasons, have been outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. But for South Carolina also, the team is right around about 60th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and that's the one place where Clemson has really been able to ascend. Last year, even when they made the Final Four run, wasn't necessarily sharp on defense, 54th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and in their games played away from home, it's really been able to travel as Clemson right now a top 55 team in terms of points allowed per possession away from home. Do you think that this this is going to be a little bit of a slower game. This is a Clemson team that's been very efficient on offense, but they're not going to allow a lot of second chances with the way that Shefflin controls things down low. And with the improved guard play of Clemson, I do think that they find a way to be able to get the job done with guys like Miles Foster and company being able to step up, just providing a little bit more depth for Clemson. So did set them as a 3.5-point favorite. One to lay up to 3 with Clemson, and in on the under semi-total 133.5. 609, 610 on the betting board. Western Carolina is on the road against Tennessee. Tennessee, a 36 to 36.5-point favorite. Totals between 143.5 to 144. One to lay up to 37 with Tennessee. I typically don't lay mondo numbers like this, but man, this is a Western Carolina bunch that it is rough for them. They lose pretty much any player that averaged more than 2 points per game for them from a season ago. They've got a little bit down low, and Bernard Polite, who's able to give you 7.5 rebounds per game, and they also do bring back from a few seasons ago Marcus Kelly. He missed all of last season due to injury. He's come back. He's given the team 7.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, but Western Carolina in the bottom 15 of the country in terms of taking care of the ball. 17.5 turnovers per game. Got a pair of guys in Ice Emery along with Cord Stansberry who've been able to combine for about 23 points per game. They don't really shoot it well from three-point range. And this Tennessee team, I mean, they're just like a bull constrictor. They're a top 15 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They've got all sorts of versatility. Chaz Lanier has done a great job of filling the shoes of Dalton Knecht. He's not quite Dalton Knecht, let's call it what it is, but I mean, still 19 points on 47.5% three-point shooting. And the reason why this offense is so efficient and so smooth is Zakai Ziegler. He has turned the ball over about 3 times per contest, but 7.5 assists per game, 11.5 points per game. Having an experienced guy like that in the backcourt is big. And then you've been able to get nice contributions out of someone like a Felix Oparo who comes in from Ohio State. Jemiah Mashack, he's been able to come along and was never really a primary guy at Tennessee, but he's stuck it out. He's given the team 6.5 points, 4.5 boards, just does a good job of knowing his role, getting about 2.3 steals per contest as well. This Tennessee team is really clicking on all cylinders. We've seen them be able to blow out teams time and time again when they've been at home, as their last real bye game at home was against UT Martin. They won that game 78 to 35. Like, this team is just absolutely dumping teams with regards to not giving up a lot of production. And that's a big reason why I did something I told 141.5. Even though Tennessee has been so good with regards to their offense, I do think that we might see a little bit of regression with that three-point shooting, but they just continue to hold teams down with regards to their defense. And for Western Carolina, they did have a triumph over Bellarmine where they got to 86 points, but that's really the only Division I team that they've been able to break the 70 mark against. Well, like when they played against Marquette, they only got to 62 points in that game. Against Florida State, just 57 there. I think that's going to be a rough offensive performance here for Western Carolina. So I'm in on the under. I told 141.5. One to lay up to 37 with Tennessee. 611, 612 on the betting board. This is from the Spectrum Center. Florida and North Carolina do battle. From the state of North Carolina, Florida, a 4 to 4.5 point underdog. Total on this game, it is 166.5. This opened up at a 2.5, and I set my number at 4. Like, now that we're starting to get to a 4.5, that becomes my buy point on North Carolina. And with this North Carolina unit, it has been less than savory for them. They've already got 4 losses this year. I just feel like RJ Davis is going to get more efficient with regards to his shot taking. Like last year, he shot nearly 40% from 3, 21.5 points per contest, and I don't know if he's going to duplicate that, but right now he's shooting 25% from 3-point range. I do think that sooner rather than later it's going to be coming about. And for North Carolina, if you're looking to bet them, I would say you probably want to be looking at them more in-game, because I've just noticed in their games they've gotten off to really slow starts, and then they pick it up as the game goes along. So if you're looking for a little bit of something there, because I know that some of you guys asked for first half lines and picks, that's something to be taking a look at there. And for North Carolina, the big key is they don't need to win the battle down low. They can't get destroyed down low, though, as they don't have a single guy that really gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, but they do have 5 separate guys that give you at least 4 rebounds per game. Davis is one of them. Seth Trimble, Ben Allen Lubin, Jalen Washington, and Jalen Withers, all between 4.7 and 5 rebounds per game. Trimble, obviously a nice backcourt supporter, shooting 45% from 3-point range, and you've been able to get some good 3-point shooting out of both Ian Jackson and Drake Boom Boom Powell. Both of these guys are freshmen. They're shooting 40% from 3-point range. They've been able to do a rock solid job, giving the team some contribution there, with Jackson being able to supply the team with 11 points per game. So they're going to be critical, because for North Carolina, they're going to have a tough time down low against Alex Condon, who for Florida has been able to give the team 7 rebounds per game. And Florida, they've really turned over a new leaf with their defense. Last year, they were outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. In games played away from home, they are number 3 in the country. There's a points allowed on a per possession. So I did set my total at 164, even though I do think that this is going to be a very up and down game. This is a Florida team that is doing a much better job on defense than they have done in past years, so I'm going to be willing to take the under in this spot, despite the fact that you do have two flamethrower scorers in the Florida backcourt, as you've had Elijah Martin along with Walter Clayton be able to combine for about 34.5 points, 7 assists or so per contest. Elijah Martin is able to give you 6 rebounds per game, both shoot about 37% from 3. And Will Richard, he's seen a little bit of drop off in his scoring. I do expect his 25% 3-point shooting to be picking up, but he's given the team 2 steals. He's throwing in there 12 points per game. Thomas Ha, he's able to give you about 5.5 or so rebounds per game. Sam Alexis, along with Ruben Chinalu, these two guys have been rock solid in terms of being able to pull in there some boards as well. So I think these guys have been great. Urban Klavsar, who comes on over from overseas, I think that he's going to be able to give you a little bit more in the backcourt as well. But I do think that once you get past 4 with this game being played out there in the state of North Carolina, starting to go a little bit too far. 4.5 or more. Won't take those points with North Carolina, and on the over, set my total at 164. 613, 614 on the betting board. James Madison is on the road against Wake Forest. Wake Forest is a 7.5 to an 8.5 point favorite total on this game. It is between 136 to 136.5. Set my number at 7. I'm going to be willing to take the 8 with James Madison. Just have not liked what I've seen out of this Wake Forest team at all. Like, you could tell how big the loss of Kevin Boopie Miller has been for the team, because really, other than Kevin Boopie Miller, a lot of the pieces from last year are back for Wake Forest, but they're well outside the top 125 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Last year, Hunter Sallis was shooting darn near 40% from 3-point range. This year, 16.5 points, 3.5 boards, 3 assists, but he's shooting 24.5% from 3. As a collective, Wake Forest is shooting 26.5% from 3. That is going to go northward. I don't see them completing the season shooting 26.5% from 3-point range, but it's been off-putting to say the least. And for Wake Forest, the defense has honestly been very good. They're about 38th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. As you got guys who are able to hit the glass. Trayvon Spillers has come in from Appalachian State, 10.5 points, 9.5 boards, a block per contest. You've got Omaha Blue still out of the fold for the team, so perhaps once he gets back, if he gets back, that'll be able to help this team at 7. But I mean, for Efton Reed, even though his versatility in terms of being able to pop threes hasn't necessarily been on display this year, it's giving the team 7.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game, but you just need a little bit more of an outside presence. I like Cameron Hildreth giving you 4 assists, 4.5 boards, 12 points per game to take the load off of Hunter Sallis, but both of those guys have been awful from 3-point range, and this is a James Madison team that they are outside the top 170 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Preston Spradlin, though, year in and year out, he gets these guys to play some relatively rock-solid defense. I do think that it is going to be improving as the season goes along, and the team has done a really nice job of just being able to find good, clean-flowing offense with Mark Freeman, who was the top scorer 2 seasons ago over at Morehead State, missed all of last year due to injury. He is reunited with Preston Spradlin. He's been able to give out north of 4 assists per contest. You've been able to have some of the holdovers from last season, as they don't have a ton of them, but the guys have stayed in the program. They've been able to help this team be a little bit more up-tempo, because Preston Spradlin, back when he was over at Morehead State, it was a little bit more of a slow and controlled team. Now with having some of these guys in the fold, like Xavier Brown, who's able to give you 13 points per game, this team is playing with a little bit more tempo. Bryce Lindsey has been able to throw in there about 14 points per game, and as a whole, it is a James Madison team that is shooting 37% from 3-point range. To the credit of Wake Forest, they've done a relatively solid job with regards to their defense in terms of being able to guard the perimeter, but I think that Elijah Hutchins-Everett, Monte J. Smith, combined for 13 rebounds per game, they're going to do just enough down low to allow James Madison to remain in this game. And for Wake Forest, you need these guys like Parker Christensen, these ancillary pieces, to be able to step up. It is Wake Forest team that defensively, they have now given up 66 points or fewer for their last 5 games. Got a James Madison team that they themselves have been able to buckle down on defense, giving up 66 or less in each of their last 4 games. But do think that for both of these teams, you're going to be able to find some relatively good open looks, and I do think that James Madison holds in this game. So did set my total at a 139. I am in on the over, and I think north of 7, I'm going to be willing to take those points with JMU. 615, 616 on the betting board. Dayton is going to be playing us UNLV. UNLV, a underdog of 11 points. So now this game is between 141 to 141.5, and with UNLV, I did set them as an underdog of 12.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay with Dayton. Dayton coming off of a massive win against Marquette, so do have to fear a little bit of a letdown spot, but I just really can't tell you what this UNLV team is doing that great. As for UNLV, they're outside the top 100 in both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They're okay at generating turnovers, but they're not necessarily great at generating turnovers. Dedrin Thomas has been a rock-solid guard, 16.5 points, 4 assists, shooting north of 40% from 3-point range, and then Jalen Bedford along Julian Erschwain, they're both shooting north of 40% from 3-point range as well. As a whole, UNLV is shooting about 37.9% from 3-point range, so I guess that's the answer to what they're truly doing well, but they go up against a Dayton defense that has been pretty good in their own right. They had a few harebrained games like the game against North Carolina, which has warped their numbers a little bit. Right now they're 155th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I do think that that is going to be a number that is going to be improving throughout the season. As for Dayton, when they've been at home, they've done a nice job of being able to shut down the three-point arc. As a matter of fact, overall, they're allowing opponents to shoot just 31% from three-point range. Meanwhile, UNLV, they're allowing opponents to shoot 36.5% from three, including 42.9% on the road. Now, that's a number that's a little bit of an outlier, but you've got a Dayton team that has been amazing in the backcourt. They're shooting 37.5% as a collective, and each of their top four scorers that made at least one three this far this season, shooting at least 38.8% from three-point range, with Enoch Cheeks being a do-it-all sort of guy. 2 steals, 7.5 boards, 16 points per game. This team doesn't necessarily have like ideal size or anything like that. I would like to see Zed Key give you more than 4 rebounds per game, but he's been cleaning up the glass with a block and a half per contest. St. Santos, 14 points, right around about 6 rebounds per game, and this team just does a good job of being able to make the most out of every possession. They only turn the ball over about 9 times per game. Malachi Smith, 6 assists per contest. Would like to see Posh Alexander find his role a little bit more with this team, but it feels like game in and game out, things are getting a little bit more comfortable for him. A combined 6 steals over the last 3 games, and the last 3 games, 9 assists as well, so he's done a nice job of accepting a little bit of a smaller role and taking it and running with it. And then you've also got Malachi Smith shooting 54.5% from three-point range. Certainly that should be going downward a little bit, but for UNLV, really other than Jeremiah Cherry, who's able to give you 6.5 rebounds per game, haven't had a lot of size down low. Like, I was expecting a lot more this season out of Jalen Hill. He played in just 7 games due to injury, but this guy was a starter at Oklahoma 2 seasons ago that's only been able to supply the team with about 7.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. To his credit, he's able to give you 2 steals per contest as a 6'6", little bit of a versatile sort of big man, but still, with UNLV, it's been a little bit, shall we say, disappointing what we've seen out of them. That is very much indicated in their against the spread numbers, and for this UNLV team, 72 points or less in each of their last 5 games. They have just been coming out very short on the offensive side of things, while Dayton, I do think that they are going to be able to light this UNLV team ablaze from three-point range, and Dayton's starting to play a little bit more up-tempo. I'm not saying that this is going to be a team that absolutely guns it or anything like that, but they're playing at about a full possession more per game than they did a season ago, and with just how clean their offense is, they've been able to get to at least 77 points in 4 of their last 5 games and 71 plus in each of their last 5. So I did set my total 142.5, as I do think that they're going to get plenty of open looks from three-point range against this UNLV team, so I'm going to be willing to lay up to 12 with Dayton. I did set my total 142.5. I'm also in on the over. 617, 618 on the main board. Florida International is going to be on the road against East Carolina. East Carolina is a 7.5 point favorite total on this game. It is between 141.5 and 142, and did semi-total 144.5. I'm going to be in on the over with Florida International. This is one of the more up-tempo teams in all of college basketball. And to their credit, they've been able to lock down quite a bit more on defense. Last year, they were dead last in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, leaving something to be desired on the glass. But last year, they were a bottom 5 team in regards to rebound rate. They've been able to do a little bit better on that front this season as well. So credit where it is due. As a matter of fact, for Florida International, 24th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Do you think that that's going to go northward a little bit? But you also have an East Carolina team that they are about 272nd in the country with this regard. But even with that, I am going to be willing to lay the number with East Carolina, because I do think that even though Florida International is a little bit better on the glass, right now Gene Brewer is having to do a little bit of everything for the team. 15 points, 6 boards, 3 assists per contest, all while shooting 20.5% from three-point range, while Florida International has been much better with regards to their perimeter defense. Their three-point shooting offense shooting 27% from three-point range. Other than Brewer, you don't have a single guy that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game as Jonathan Ibar, along with Vinay Salshum, hopefully I said that correctly. Both of these guys give you about 4.5 boards per contest. You just need a little bit more there, with Jonathan Ibar has been in and out of the fold. Should be good to go in this one. He's coming off of a 11 rebound performance in the team's last game, a win over Stetson. But for this East Carolina team, I do think that they're going to have the upper hand down low with what CJ Walker has been able to provide. He's been able to supply the team with 6.5 boards, 17 points per game. Now, for the perimeter offense of East Carolina, leaves a lot to be desired. They're shooting 29% from three-point range, but RJ Felton, he's going to be the best player out there on the floor. 2.5 assists, 7 boards, 18 points per game. Love what he's able to bring to the table. Now, need a little bit more of the likes of Jan Farrell, just Shane Woodyard, pair of guys giving you about 5.5 points per contest. But for East Carolina, this team has been able to do a really nice job of buckling down with regards to their defense as well. I know that from the perimeter, it's been a little bit rough for them, but they don't allow you to get a lot of second chances. And for Florida National, with still allowing a lot of teams to be able to get those second and third chance opportunities on offense, it has prevented them from being a top 100 defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, for East Carolina, I do think that they're going to be able to do a nice job, be able to punch the ball down low, being able to get those second chances themselves, because for Florida National, they just can't prolong possessions, and when you're not able to shoot it from three-point range, only getting a rebound on 26% of your misses, that's 228th in the country, that's a little bit of an issue. While East Carolina, they're doing so on about 32.2% of their misses, that is 77th in all of college basketball. So I do think that for East Carolina, they're going to be able to win from within. I do think that this is going to be a game that's going to be cranked a little bit more up-tempo, as we have seen this East Carolina team now give up at least 69 points in 3 of their last 4 games. So I'm in on the over, so my total 144.5, with East Carolina willing to lay up to 8 with them. 619, 620 on the betting board. George Mason is on the road against Duke. Duke is a 19-point favorite, and your total on this game is 136.5. Set my number at 20. Don't really want to be going past the 19, but I'm going to be willing to lay the 19 with this George Mason team. Still a very rock-solid defense. Tony Skin has come in, and he's had this team playing very slowly. Last year, they were about 340th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and they've sped up a little bit since then. They're more around 200th in the country with that regard. But Duke, under John Shire, they have been one of the more slow-tempo teams in all of college basketball themselves, right around about 253rd in all of college basketball with that regard. But, I mean, they've been able to do a good, rock-solid job of just being efficient, both on the offensive side of things and the defensive side of things with this Duke team. They still leave a little bit of something to be desired with their perimeter shooting. That's really the big issue they do have with Cooper Flagg, because Cooper Flagg does a great job on defense. He's a tremendous shot blocker. He's able to handle, gives the team 16 points, 3.5 assists, 9 rebounds per game. Shoots 22% from three-point range. That's a big reason why Duke is right around about 30th in the country in terms of points scored on the per-possession basis, rather than being like a top 15 team. But what has been a shot in the arm for this team, Isaiah Evans has already missed a few games as far as the season, but he has given the team 14-plus points in 3 out of the last 5 games, shooting 50% from three-point range, and has really given them that threat from the outside. Would like to see Tyrese Proctor in a little bit more of a main facilitation role, but he's been able to shoot 40% from three-point range as well. And then for this George Mason team, not quite the same defense that we've seen in past years, and not quite the same perimeter shooting team that we've seen in past years as well. 13.5 turnovers per game, that's a bit of an issue. And for Darius Maddox last season, he was shooting 40% from 3. That's more around about 33% thus far this season. He's actually shot more like 36% when he's been on the road, but I mean, he's been a little bit feast or famine last 4 games. 9, 3, 13, and 17 points overall, averaging about 15 points per contest. And this team just doesn't have what they had down low when they had Keyshawn Hall from 8 seasons ago. You've had Jalen Haynes be able to pull in there about 6 rebounds per game, but he doesn't have the versatility of a guy like Hall. You've had Giovanni Amaruju give you 10-plus points, 5-plus rebounds per game, so that's been rock solid. But I just think that this is a big step up in class and competition for this George Mason team, and this has been a Duke team that has been very stifling with their defense. You just take a look at what they've been able to do in their home games recently. They give up the 78 spot to Auburn, who many people would argue, and I would be in agreement with them, they're perhaps the number 1 team in all of college basketball, and that's pretty much the only team that they've allowed north of 65 points to at home all season long, as they have just been flattening a lot of teams out. To the credit of George Mason, 22nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, so they've been able to do a great job there. But Duke, they're number 7 with this regard, and I think that Duke is just going to take it to this George Mason team. I did set my total at a 134, as I do think that for George Mason, this is just a little bit of step up in competition. I think that they're going to have a tough time offensively, but I do think that once again, the defense, it is good to be there for them, so I'm going to be in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 19.5 with Duke. 621, 622 on the betting board. It is Michigan State playing against Oakland. This is at Little Caesars Arena, so technically a neutral court game right now with Oakland. They are a 16.5 to a 17-point underdog. Total on this game between 136 to a 137. I'm willing to take 17 with Oakland. I'm seeing a straight 16 out there as well. I'd rather take 17 rather than lay 17. Now with Oakland, it has been a less than savory start to the season for them on offense. They are outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They are shooting well less than 31% from three-point range, but the defense has been a little bit improved for them this season. I'm not saying it's amazing, but they're about 234th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and we've seen some struggle and strife for Michigan State. They're outside the top 50 with regards to their points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Michigan State, they're right there with Oakland as one of the lesser teams in terms of their three-point shooting percentage in all of college basketball. For Michigan State, it's been very slow going for them, as they are outside the top 275 75 with regards to their three-point shooting percentage as well. Jace Richardson, he's been able to shoot 40+% from three. He's starting to give the team double figures. That's nice to see, but 339th is Michigan State in terms of their three-point shooting percentage. Oakland 362nd. So got a pair of teams that are just throwing up a bunch of bricks. Now, I do think that there's going to be some positivity moving forward for both of these teams from beyond the arc, but I did set my total at 136.5, so at a 137 or higher, I'm going to be in on the under, as you do have a Oakland team that I think is going to be able to do a relatively okay job along the perimeter. Michigan State is going to be able to win the rebound battle because you've got a guy that's able to give you 8+ boards per contest in Jackson Killer, along with 8.5 points per game. Has some versatility that I think Oakland is going to have a tough time with, but Tubaru Navalura, hopefully I said that correctly, he's been able to give this Oakland team right around about 7.5 rebounds per game. It's a new look team because they lose 4 of their top 5 scorers from a season ago. DQ Cole is really that lone guy that's back for Oakland, but Alan David Mbeka, who comes over from UMKC, he's been rock solid and he's been versatile. Block and a half, steal, 13.5 points per game. Like what I'm seeing there, they just need to get more out of these guys like Jason Woolridge, Malcolm Chrissy, who've combined for 13 points in the backcourt, really just not shooting well from three-point range. Again, with Michigan State, I do think that there's going to be positivity with their three-point shooting. I like Frankie Fiddler, what he brings to the table, 10 points per game. Right now, he's shooting 19.5% from three-point range. After last year at Omaha, he shot about 35.5% from three-point range. Michigan State needs to clean up some of those turnovers just a little bit as well. 12 turnovers per game, though, not really on Jaden Akins, who's been able to give the team 13 points as their primary scorer. I do think that this is going to be a bit of a slog of a game. Michigan State looking to play pretty slow, under control. This is an Oakland team that has been very good with their defense as well. How about 68 points or fewer allowed in each of their last 4 games? They have been able to exceed the 66-point plateau once this far this season. So I did set my total at 136 after you're at the 137. I'm in on the under, and at 17+, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Oakland. 623, 624 on the betting board. Robert Morris plays host to Towson. Towson is a pick'em to a 1-point road favorite, and your total on this game, that is between 131 and a 131.5, and I set Robert Morris as a 1.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to take them as a pick'em / a money line underdog. While reinforcements are on the way for Towson, I just have not liked the way that this team has been playing all season long, and I expected more from them because other than their leading rebounder from a season ago in Charles Thompson, they pretty much brought back like 7 out of their top 9 scorers from a season ago. Fully recognize again that Tyler Tejada just coming back in the fold for them after he missed 6 or so games, and since he's come back in his first 2 games back, has given the team a combined 26 points in those 2 games, so he's looking relatively rock solid. But this is a Towson unit that right now, they're only turning the ball over 9.5 times per game. They're always a very slow and controlled team. Once again, outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, but they shoot 65% the free throw line. They shoot 29.5% from three-point range, despite the fact that they've got some nice top-flight scorers like Tomas Sullivan. He's been able to shoot 40% from three-point range. It's given the team about 7.5 points, 4 boards per contest. He's been able to throw in there a steal per game, so has some good overall just versatility with his team. He's been able to get 6.5 points, 6.5 boards per contest out of Mekhi Lowry as well. And I think part of it is just I was expecting a lot more out of Messiah Jones. A few seasons ago when this guy was out there in the SoCon conference over at Wofford, he was able to supply that team with about 10 points per game. He was throwing in there 5 boards, and right now he's giving you 4 points and 3.5 rebounds per game. You just need a little bit more out of him. Conversely, for Robert Morris, it's big that they've got Cam Woods back out there as well. He was their top scorer to begin the year, went down with a little bit of injury. Now he's back in the fold for them, and he has been tremendous in the backcourt. 11.5 points, 3.5 assists. Not shooting it well from 3. This is a Robert Morris team that they need to clean up their offense as well. Shooting 30% from distance, 14 turnovers per game, but they should be able to win that battle down low with Alvaro Folguerius, who comes on over from Spain, supplying the team with 10.5 boards, nearly 12 points per game. Also has some nice handles, 2.5 assists per game, and at 6'9", shooting over 40% from three-point range. He's really been able to lead the way for this team, and then been able to get a double-figure amount of points out of Marion Dixon, who's been able to just grow on me as the season has went along. He's been able to give the team double figures in 4 of the last 5 games, and as a matter of fact, in terms of what he's been able to do on the glass as well, this guy's been able to haul in their 7+ rebounds per game in the last 4 as well, so he's been seeing a nice tick up in terms of his overall contributions. It's a Towson team that just has been held to 63 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. In that game that they had 63 points in, that was their overtime loss against Kennesaw State, a super duper up-tempo team. So you're getting a big giant nothing burger from this team on offense. That's a big reason why I did set my total at 127.5. I just don't think that Towson holds up their end of the bargain. Offensively, recognize that this is a Robert Morris team that's given up north of 70 in 4 of their last 5 games, but with Towson, even with getting back Tyler Teata, things have been all sorts of disjointed with regards to the offense. You really don't have anyone that's filling out north of 2.5 assists per game, and I think that Robert Morris takes full advantage. So I'm taking Robert Morris as a pick-em / outright on the money line, and with this total, I'm in on the under. Set my total 127.5, 625, 626 on the betting board. Siena is going to be playing us the St. Bonaventure. The Bonnies find themselves as 7.5 to 8-point road favorites in your total on this game, between 127.5 to 128. St. Bonaventure has covered all but one of their games thus far this season. I think that they keep it going. I'm willing to lay up to 10.5 with St. Bonaventure. As for Siena, you just have not been able to get a lot from this team offensively, and I like what I'm seeing out of Major Freeman. JUCOrecruiting.com had him as a top 75 junior college transfer for this year's cycle, and he's been living up to that. 15 points, 2 assists, shooting 36% from 3-point range, but the 13 turnovers per game for a relatively low-tempo team is a little bit concerning, and you just haven't been able to get a lot down low either. Nobody on the team is giving you north of 4.6 rebounds per game. Miles Wilmoth, he comes over from Butler. He's been able to give you about 4 boards per contest. He provides size at 6'10", but it's just not going to be able to match up with what St. Bonaventure is able to do. As for the Bonnies, they did lose 4 of their top 5 guys from a season ago in terms of overall scoring, but they brought in Chase Moore, who has been able to give you more. Comes over from the Missouri Valley Conference, 15 points, 7 boards, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. Melvin Council is just someone from Wagner who's been able to do a little bit of this and that for them, as he's another one of those guys that's just so versatile. 3 assists, 5.5 boards, 13 points per game, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. When you take a look at St. Bonaventure, what they've been able to do on the glass, they've been one of your better teams in terms of overall rebound rate, especially on the road. They've got a top 75 mark in terms of rebound rate on the road in college basketball. Siena more around about 200th in the country with regards to their rebound rate, with also having Noah Brown, who's able to give you 4.5 boards. He's a big man that's not going to stretch the floor and pop it from 3-point range, but Elijah Jones has been able to shoot 40+% from 3-point range. St. Bonaventure, just a tough customer on defense, a top 50 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They gave up 72 points in a game earlier this year against Utah State, and that is pretty much the only team, aside from one harebrained game against Canisius, to be able to break the 70-point plateau against them. I think that this is going to be a rough one for a Siena bunch that just have been out of sorts with their offense. They scored 71 points on Bucknell, but other than their 2 early games that went to overtime to begin the season, they just have not been able to really give you a lot offensively. Outside their first 3 games of the season, that's their only game in which they got to north of 70 points, and that was a 71 spot. So I did think that St. Bonaventure going to slow things down to a crawl. Siena hasn't necessarily been too bad with their defense either, but I think that in a low-scoring slog, St. Bonaventure is able to get the job done with their overall versatility and how the guard play has been doling things out. So I'm willing to lay up to 10.5 with St. Bonaventure. Semi-total at 125, so also in on the under 627, 628 on the betting board. It is Missouri. They play us to Jacksonville St. Jacksonville St is an 18-point underdog. Total on this game, it is 147, and set my line at 16.5. I'm going to be willing to take those points with Jacksonville St. Really like what I'm seeing out of the offense, as last few seasons for Jacksonville St have been typically them being outside the top 200 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Well, that is turned around with Jerome Pierre entering into the fold. He is 4th in the country in scoring, 23.2 points, 5.5 boards, 4.5 assists, making north of 42% of his threes. He began his career over at Southern Miss along with Wichita State, has come in and has really transformed this offense. And Jacksonville State, as they typically are, top 60 team in the country with regards to rebound rate, as Michael Hoagie, who comes on over from St. Peter's. He's been the main man down low, 10.5 points, 8.5 rebounds per game, but you've also been able to get right around about 8 rebounds per game out of Mason Nichols. Marcellus Brigham, he's been able to give you about 6 points, 5 boards, and for Nicholson, he's been able to supply the team with a block per contest as well. Jackson State is doing all this as well, with only turning the ball over about 10 times per game. Missouri, they have been a top 25 offense in terms of points scored on a per possession basis at home, but those numbers are warped a little bit because they played against, let's call it what it is, 2 of the lesser teams in all of college basketball. The game against Mississippi Valley State, they scored 111 points. The game against Arkansas Pine Bluff, 112 points. If you look outside of that, yes, they've still been a rock-solid offense. You've got Tamar Bates along with Mark Mitchell, both giving you 13 points per contest. Bates shooting about 36% from 3-point range, but It's nothing out of control or insane. Now, this is a Missouri team that under Dennis Gates are always looking to push tempo a little bit more. And for Jacksonville St, they're still a team that very much reels it in with regards to their tempo. They're about 325th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. But I will say this for Jacksonville St, this is a unit that, because they have so much firepower on offense, it has led to the defense slipping up just a little bit for them. Not saying that it's terrible by any stretch of the imagination, but for Jacksonville St, they're now ranking about 216th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So I do think that you're going to get a game in which we're going to be seeing a lot of good, clean possessions in this one. Both teams being able to knock down a lot of shots. So I did set my total at a 152.5. I'm in on the over. Now with Missouri, I can only set them as 16.5 point favorite. So you're at 17 plus, going to be willing to take those points with Jacksonville St. We'll be writing up this one as well. 6:29, 6:30 on the card. It is Mississippi State playing against Central Michigan. This is a neutral court game from Mississippi Coliseum with Mississippi State 19.5 to 20 point favorites. Total game between 146 and 146.5, and I'm writing up the under. I set my total at a 142.5. It's a Central Michigan unit that has been able to do a relatively solid job with their defense over the last few seasons. They've been a top 200 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They've done a very good job on the glass. Both of these teams in games played in a road or neutral court environment are top 50 teams in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of missed shots that their opponents do not reel in as an offensive rebound. So they allow their opponents to reel in 24% or less of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. So they do a good job not allowing second chance opportunities. And for Central Michigan, I like what I'm seeing out of Anthony Pritchard. Do-it-all guard, 5 assists, 4.5 rebounds, 13.5 points per game. And for Central Michigan, last year they were awful with their three-point shooting. They've been quite respectable this year. They're shooting about 34% per three. Here's the issue, though. You've got a Mississippi State team that's in the top 50 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Central Michigan outside the top 350 in terms of clean possessions. They're turning the ball over on well north of 20% of their possessions. It has been rough for them. You do have some versatility as well. Out of 6'10", Uganas Jarazavicic, hopefully I said that correctly, shooting 42% from three, 12.5 points, comes in from Lithuania, and he's been rock solid. And Jacoby Heedy, he's able to generate a few turnovers of his own, but for Mississippi State, this is a team that's right now flowing good, clean offense. They're playing a little bit more up-tempo than they have in past years, but it's not like they're completely gunning it. Joshua Hubbard has been that main man with nearly 19 points per game, shooting 43% from three-point range, and for Mississippi State, they're only turning the ball for about 9.5 times per game as well. This continues to be one of the best rebounding teams in all of college basketball. Charles Matthews, Michael Nwoko, along Keyshawn Murphy, these three guys combining for 20-plus rebounds per game. You've been able to have Riley Kugel is only shooting about 30% from three with 10 points per game, so he needs to get it going a little bit more. And Claudio Harris has been in a little bit of a funk as well. He has scored 10 points or fewer in 4 of the last 5 games, but still shooting about 33% from three, supplying the team with 10 points per contest. I do think that for Mississippi State, they're going to be able to show their might on defense. They haven't been quite the same defense as they have been in past years. A lot of that is because they played against a Prairie View team that plays all sorts of just crazy in general, so I do think that that defense is going to be reined in a little bit more. This is a Central Michigan team that, to their credit, they've been able to get past the 77-point plateau in 4 of their last 5 games, but the context is 3 of those games were against non-Division I teams, and when they played against actual Division I teams, things have been very much more muted with regards to their offense, and I do think that that is going to be the case here. So I'm writing up the under. I do think that for Central Michigan, this is going to be a big step up in competition for them. I don't think that they're ready for it. Recognize that they were able to hang in there against Marquette. I don't think that they're going to be able to do so this time around. So willing to lay up to 22 with Mississippi State. Set my total 142.5, so I'm also in on this total under. 631, 632, another game that I'll be writing up as Seton and they're facing off against Villanova. And Villanova is an 8 to an 8.5 point favorite. Total on this game is between 126 and 127. Set Villanova is a 12.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and I'm going to be writing that up because you do have a Villanova unit that has been really picking it up with their offense. Top 25 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, and they have the nation's leading scorer in Eric Dixon, who has been incredible this year. 6 boards, 2 assists, 25.8 points per game on 52.3% three-point shooting. Villanova as a whole, they're shooting north of 40.5% from three-point range. Now, for Seton, this has been a good defense. They rank in the top 35 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They need to because their offense is 321st in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This despite the fact that it's not like there's some sort of a terrible three-point shooting team. For Seton, the main man for them has been Isaiah Coleman. He's been able to do a nice job logging for them 12 points, about 2 steals per contest, shooting 39.5% for 3, and Chauncey Jenkins, 11.5 points. He shoots 42.5% for 3. As a matter of fact, as a whole, you've got a Seton Hall team that's shooting 35.4% from 3-point, that's above average in terms of the national rankings. They go up against a Villanova unit, though, that they do leave something to be desired down low. They are allowing opponents to shoot right around about 35.2% from 3. That falls to about 33% when they are at home, though. And then for Seton Hall, with regards to their perimeter defense, they've been allowing opponents to shoot about 32% from 3. That's about 125th in the country. And Seton Hall has been doing the whole is greater than the sum of its parts approach with regards to rebounding. You don't have a single guy that's giving you north of 4.3 rebounds per game, with Chauncey Jenkins being that guy that is actually giving you about 4.3 rebounds per game. Yet they're not getting just completely bludgeoned or anything like that on the glass. Villanova has always had a little bit of a tough time being able to find good, consistent rebounding. Right now they are clocking in about 17th, though, with regards to rebound rate. Meanwhile, the Seton Hall team, with not having that primary guy to be able to pull on the boards, they're about 100th in the country. And for Seton Hall, it is going to be a case where they're going to need to shut down Wooga Poplar as well. He's been a nice off-the-ball scorer who's been able to log 13.5 points, shooting 36% from 3, but he's been a big reason why Villanova's been so good on the glass as well. At 6'5", he's able to pull in there about 6.5 rebounds per game. You've got Anyak Boyaki, who comes on over for Fresno State, a block, 6 boards per contest for Villanova. They are turning the ball over a little bit north of 11 times per game, but they've also done a good job of being able to generate just a few more steals per game than they have in past seasons as well. For Seton Hall, the tide has been turning a little bit more with their offense, 67-plus points in 2 of their last 3 games, but man, it's been rough on that front. Meanwhile, Villanova has just been an absolute flamethrower with their offense, especially at home recently. So I did set Villanova as a 12.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. And then with my total, set mine at a 126.5. It's a Seton Hall team that just has not been able to get out of their own way offensively. So I'm in on this total under, and with my write-up, I'm going to be willing to lay with Villanova. 633, 634 on the betting board. UMKC is on the road against Wichita State. Wichita State, a 14 to 14.5 point favorite. Total on this game between 146 and 146.5. I'm going to be willing to take the 14 plus here with the UMKC. For Wichita State and Paul Mills' teams, typically for Paul Mills' teams are best when they're shooting well from 3-point. Right now, they're shooting 31.6% from the outside. I like what I've been seeing their main point guard they get out of Georgia and Justin Hill. He's been able to supply the team with 14 points, 4 boards, 3.5 assists per game, but shooting just 26% from 3 typically is more around about the 32-33% tile. And you've got Harnell Beverly also shooting less than 30% from 3, 10.5 points per contest. Now they should be able to win the battle down low with having Quincy Ballard being able to haul in there about 6 or so boards per contest, but I mean, other than Quincy Ballard, you don't have as much size as he did a season ago with the likes of Kenny Poto and company. Well, for UMKC, I like what I'm seeing out of some of the guys that are just oh so versatile for this team. Anderson Kopp along Jamar Brown. These 2 guys have been able to combine for 11 boards, 20 points per game, 3 steals, and they're both shooting north of 37% from 3-point. Down low, Melvin Ibankoli. He comes on over from the country of France at 6'8", about 6 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. He's been rock solid at being able to clean up the glass. Now, it is a UMKC team that is currently clocking in outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis and really slowing things down. They are outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. So UMKC been able to rise up a little bit more with regards to that defense. And for Wichita State, this has been a unit that's been getting completely bludgeoned on the defensive side of things as well. How about 87 plus points allowed in 3 of their last 4 games? It is a UMKC team that's not necessarily efficient with their defense. They're well outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And have to like the overall versatility of Corey Washington, 12.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. So it's a situation of something he's got to give. Wichita State is looking to run it and gun it. This is a UMKC team that's looking to dial it back. I do think that Wichita State going to see a little bit of positivity with their 3-point shooting, but I do think that UMKC going to be able to slow this game down a little bit more. I think that Wichita State continues to have some of those perimeter struggles. I do think that UMKC is going to continue to have some of their turnovers as well. So foresee this being a bit of a sloppy game. UMKC, by the way, generating nearly 10 steals per contest as well. So I set my total at 143.5. I'm going to be in on the under, and with Wichita State, going set them as a 13.5 point favorite. So we'll take 14 plus here with the UMKC. 635, 636 on the betting board. Western Kentucky is playing us to Seattle. Seattle is an underdog of 7.5 to 8 points, and total on this game, you're going to be getting it at between a 149 to a 151, so a little bit of range there with Western Kentucky. I'm willing to lay up to 8 with them. For Western Kentucky, this team has been still playing at one of the most harebrained and frenetic paces in all of college basketball, and I think that Seattle is going to be really looking to try to die things down a little bit more. Seattle not necessarily a super slow team, but they do play at a little bit of a slower tempo. Typically, this is a team that hangs their head on defense, but they've been well outside the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. A little bit of that has been due to a tough early season schedule, and you've had Matthew Moncrief do it all for this team. Comes in from Oklahoma State. He's been a few other places like Georgia, but 14 points, 10.5 boards for him for a team that's right now shooting 39% from three-point range. Feel like it's built on a little bit of sand, though. We've seen this team go super duper cold at times. That game against Duke, I think that they quite literally shot 25% from the floor. John Chrysophilius has been able to give you about 12 points per game, and that's a lot of holes greater than some of its parts guys like Malik Arrington, Paris Dawson, Braden Maldonado. These three guys, between the three of them, are combining for about 29 to 29.5 points per game, while Western Kentucky has been headlined by Don McHenry, being able to supply the team with 16.5 points per game. They don't necessarily have that one facilitator. You don't have anyone that's giving you north of 2.5 assists per game, but yet they're doing a nice job flowing clean offense for their overall tempo. 12 turnovers per game is not too bad. They're shooting 35% from three-point range. Western Kentucky last year was one of the better three-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball, and they've been able to continue that thus far this season. And for Western Kentucky, while this might not be an ideal team on the glass, they're about 186th with regards to rebound rate. You've had Babacar Faye along Tyrone Marshall be able to combine for about 14.5 rebounds per game. You've been able to get about 6.5 points, 5 boards as well from a little bit of a nice mixer and shaker in Anak Kalambi. He's come over from the country of Canada after he was a part-time starter last year, and he's been able to keep it going and has improved his three-point shooting about 35.5% from distance. And I do think that for Seattle, that is going to be the main kryptonite of this team. It's a Seattle team that has had a little bit of a tough time with regards to their three-point shooting defense, as over the last few seasons, they've been one of the better teams at being able to guard things from the inside. And right now with the Seattle team, they're allowing opponents to shoot from three-point range right around about 34%, 200th in all of college basketball. I think that Western Kentucky going to be able to win this game from the outside, especially with them completely shutting teams down. Top 20 in regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. But I do think that with Seattle being a little bit hit or miss from the outside, they're going to be looking to really drive the ball down low. And for Seattle, ever since they had that just big giant turd of 48 points against Duke, they've been able to get to at least 72 points in every game ever since then. And for Western Kentucky, 79 plus points in 4 straight games. I do think that they're going to be able to speed this game up. Set my total at a 150.5. So seeing a lot of 149, 150 out there, I'm going to be willing to take the over, and I'm willing to lay it with Western Kentucky. Here's another game that I'm going to write up. 637, 638 on the card. It is Georgia State, and they're going to be on the road against Auburn. Auburn, a Mondo 39 to 39.5 point favorite totals between 154.5 to a 155. And I think that Auburn is the best team in all of college basketball. They are number one in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They have been able to do an absolutely incredible job on that front. That said, I am still going to be willing to take the points with Georgia State. Georgia State, they've had some tough goes of it against the SEC teams thus far, but they lost none of those games by 40-plus points. They did lose by 30-plus when they played against Mississippi State a little bit earlier in the season, but I just feel like this number is getting just a little bit too far out of whack for Georgia State. They do have guys that are able to come in there and contribute it, like Nick McMillan, who's been able to give you 10-plus rebounds per game. He was over at UNC Asheville a season ago. Tariq Nutter is a really nice, versatile piece. 18 points, 4 boards, 3 assists. Not necessarily a great three-point shooter. And for this Georgia State team, they've done a pretty solid job of being able to surround them with some relatively nice pieces. It is a Georgia State team, by the way, that is outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, so leaving something to be desired there. But Cesar Edwards, he had 6'10", so right now give you 7 boards, 12 points per game. He's not going to continue to shoot north of 58% from three-point range, but he's been able to do a pretty rock-solid job. And then you've been able to get 8 points per game out of Jelani Hamilton. He's been able to step in. He's been able to shoot about 39% from three-point range as a freshman, so like what I'm seeing out of him. And then obviously for Auburn, you've got Gianni Broom, who's cleaning up. He's able to pop it from three-point range. He's given the team 19.5 points, 12.5 boards, north of 2.5 blocks per game. And for the Auburn backcourt, they're able to go to work when needed as well. Taj Pettiford has been able to give the team some good facilitation with 3 assists per contest. Miles Kelly's right now giving you double figures. Denver Jones is shooting 39.5% from three-point range, and right now he's trailing the three-point shooting of Pettiford, Chad Baker, Mazzara, along with Miles Kelly. All 3 of those guys shooting at least 43% from three-point range. Auburn is doing all this while turning the ball over just 8.5 times per contest. Dylan Cardwell is a really nice plus defender, who's been able to improve his offensive game as well. Like, you've got so many good pieces for this Auburn team. But again, I do feel like the number has gone a little bit too far. I think that Georgia State is going to be able to hang within 40 in this game, as I set my number at a 35.5. So not like I'm thinking that Auburn is going to be on upset alert here or anything like that, but I think that the tags and the, shall we say, reputation is starting to go just a little bit too far here. And I do think that Auburn going to be able to get it going with their offense as they have been all season long. So we'll take the north of 36 here with Georgia State. Wrote that up, and I'm in on this total over 639, 640 on the betting board. Kansas State is going to be playing against Drake. This is from the T-Mobile Center, so this is actually out there in the great state of Missouri, but this is going to be a neutral court game with Drake right now being a 1-point favorite in some spots, a 1-point underdog in other spots. So on this game is 137.5. I'm willing to take Kansas State here just because I do think that this is going to be a little bit more of a K-State crowd, and I do think that for Drake, even though this has been a tremendous start to the season for Ben McCollum and company, I do think that the overall physicality and just the overall athletic abilities of Kansas State going to be able to take hold here when you have to go up against someone like a Coleman Hawkins who's saying 6'10", gives you 9 points, 7 boards, 3.5 assists, is able to pop it from 3-point range. That makes things very difficult on guys like a Cam Manuel, who's been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. You've been able to get good production all season long out of Daniel Rayu, who's been able to supply the team with 14 points, 3.5 boards, shooting 39% from 3, but also with this Drake team, they are outside the top 250 in terms of percentage of possessions that do end in a turnover as well, so they do need to clean up those 13 turnovers per game. Now for Kansas State, they've been turning the ball over a little bit more than what you'd like to see as well, but Doug McDaniel, about 5 assists to 2.5 turnovers per game. He's been able to supply the team with 11 points per game. David Ngesson down low has been able to give you about 7 boards per contest as well, and Brandon Housen shooting north of 43% from 3 as Kansas State, when they're able to set up good clean possessions, they're shooting 37.5% from 3-point range. On the flip side, Bennett Sturts, he's a do-it-all player that I absolutely love. This guy is not afraid to do whatever it takes for getting his team to victory. 18 points, 4.5 boards, 6 assists, 2.5 steals. Not an amazing 3-point shooter, but as a whole, it's a Drake team that shoots 35% from 3-point range. They do a good job of just getting good, clean, efficient shots as well. This team is shooting north of 50% from the floor, and Drake has been able to do a nice job of being able to muddy up the 3-point shots of the other team as well. 37th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but I do think that for Kansas State, they're going to be able to hold up here. I like the fact that we've got so much versatility in the backcourt and in games played away from home, and this is technically a neutral court game. They're allowing opponents to shoot 31% from 3-point range. They're not going to be with Akur for the rest of the season, but I do think that CJ Jones going to be able to shine in a little bit more of a prominent spot. He's given out 2.5 assists. He's shooting north of 40% from 3-point range. I do think that Kansas State finds a way with their overall size to be able to win the battle on the glass and get the job done in this one. So I did set Kansas State as a 3.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them as a very slight favorite / as a money line underdog if that's the way that this breaks as well. And I'm in on the over, so I total at 141.5. 641, 642 on the betting board. Valparaiso is on the road facing off against Ohio State. The Ohio State University is a 20.5 to a 21.5 point favorite. So on this game between 150 to 152. And to somebody total 149.5, I'm in on the under. It has been an Ohio State team that has been struggling with their offense recently, and just frankly, over the last few days, they have been struggling in general. But that said, I do think that they're going to be able to get up off the mat in this one against a Valparaiso team that has been able to do a relatively solid job with their offense. For Valparaiso, you've got a trio of guys that are giving between 11 and 13 points per contest. Cooper Schwieger, Tyler Schmidt, they've been able to combine for about 23 points per game, and then you've got your main facilitator in Jefferson De La Cruz Monegro, who's out there in the backcourt, give you 2.5 assists, 11.5 points per game, with Darius Viviero helping out with 4 assists, 5 points per contest. But for Valparaiso, really their best attribute is what they're not doing. They're only turning the ball over about 10 times per game. Here's the issue that you've got for Valparaiso, though. They're allowing a lot of clean looks from 3-point range on the road. They're allowing opponents to shoot 42.3% from 3-point range. Valparaiso had this issue last year, and it's really manifesting this year. They have been one of the most leaky defenses in all of college basketball. 200th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, which doesn't sound too bad, but when you look at games when they are played away from home in a road / neutral court environment, they are currently in the bottom 20 in all of college basketball. So when they get away from their friendly confines, it really becomes an issue with Bruce Thornton. He's been able to supply this Ohio State team with 15 points, 5 assists per contest. Overall, Ohio State is shooting 41.3% for 3. I think we're going to see even more regression with that. John Mobley is continuing to shoot 54% from 3-point range. Micah Parrish is relatively versatile. He's been able to give the team 4.5 boards, 7 points per contest. Obviously, the team is going to be without Aaron Bradshaw moving forward, and Sean Stewart has been a little bit in and out of the fold, but should be all good to go in this one. 5+ boards in 4 of the last 5 games. You just don't have that sort of size for Valparaiso, other than Schwieger is able to give you 7 rebounds per game. Not a ton there. This is a Valparaiso team that I do think is going to be able to do an okay job with their offense. Maybe they're able to get past 80 points in 3 out of their last 5 games, but that's been against lesser opponents, both of the directional Illinois schools, Northern Illinois and Eastern Illinois, along with Central Michigan. Meanwhile, you've got an Ohio State team that's been very feast or famine with regards to their offense, and for Ohio State, they've actually been one of the most efficient defenses in all of college basketball as well. We have seen them hold multiple opponents at 60 points or fewer in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home. This is an Ohio State team that does check in the top 65 in all of college basketball, so I do think that they're going to be able to do a solid job on that front. Did set my total as a result at more of a 149.5, so north of 150 in on the under, and at 20.5, I'm going to be be willing to lay with Ohio State. 643, 644 on the betting board. Tennessee Tech hits the road. They're facing off against Western Illinois. Western Illinois, 1.5 to 2 point favorites. Total on this game, going to be finding it at a 138. And for Western Illinois, set them as 1.5 point favorites. At the 2, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Tennessee Tech. It is a Tennessee Tech unit that certainly has been having their ups and downs throughout the season, but I do think that they're going to be able to cover this number because they do a nice job with their backcourt of just being able to get things flowing. You just don't have a lot in the post, as you've been able to get right around about 5.5 or so rebounds per game out of Daniel Igbenui, but it's really going to be up to Jalen Jones to be able to carry things for this Tennessee Tech team, as he's been able to do a nice job at the point guard spot. He's only got about 5 assists per game, throwing in there himself 12 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, but in terms of that outside presence, it's really up to Rodney Johnson, who's been shooting 50% from three-point range, throwing in there 13.5 points per game. The other Johnson, Jalen Johnson, to be able to give you about 34.5% shooting from three-point range. But I do think that with Western Illinois, they just provide a little bit more defensively to be able to get the straight-up win. You've got Tay Knox down low, who's able to supply the team with about 7.5 or so rebounds per game, but losing guys like James Gent from a season ago. Also losing Drew Cisse, who was giving the team 11 rebounds per game. That's been really hurting this team, as it's put a lot of pressure on Ryan Myers along with Marco Melitic. And Melitic has been rock solid since coming over from Long Island, shooting 45.5% from 3, 16.5 points per game. He's put up at least 20 points in each of the last 5 games. But you've been dealing with Ryan Myers being out with a little bit of injury. He's missed a pair of games already this far this season. Just returned in that game against South Dakota. Did not look like himself with only 6 points. So even though I do like Western Illinois to get the job done outright on the money line, I set this as an incredibly tight line. Keep in mind with Western Illinois as well, they shoot 69% of the free throw line, so if this comes down to crunch time, that's a bit of an issue for Tennessee Tech. The defense has been an issue, 75 plus points allowed in each of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Western Illinois team that, when facing off against Division I competition, they have scored 66 points or fewer in essentially all but 2 of their games as far this season. So it's a good old situation of something's got to give. At 2+, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Tennessee Tech. And it's at my total 137.5, so here at the 138, I'm in on the under. 645, 646 on the betting board. Utah State is playing us to UC San Diego. UC San Diego is a underdog of 8 to 8.5 points. Total on this game between 150 to 151, and with UC San Diego, I did set them as an 8.5 point underdog, so being able to get 8 or less, I'm going to be willing to lay it with Utah State. Utah State has been just an incredible offense all season long. Top 25 nationally in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and this Utah State program just continues to make great hire after great hire. Now, you've got Jared Calhoun being the latest of them, and you've got a lot of good players that are just functioning so well in the backcourt for the team, as the duo of Mason Kozlov, Ian Martinez, 2 guys that stuck despite the fact that they were dealing with the coaching change. They've been able to combine for 35.5 points per game. Both of these guys, about 3.5 assists per game. Kozlov, 6.5 boards, 2.2 steals per contest, shooting 47% from 3. Martinez closer to 40% from the outside. As a whole, Utah State is only shooting about 35% from three-point range, but each of their top 4 scorers all shoot at least 40% from three-point range. I like what I'm seeing on this UC San Diego team. They've been one of the better teams in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per-possession basis, while they themselves turn the ball over fewer than 10 times per game. You've got Aniwana Tiat Jones, who's been able to do a nice job with his versatility, 5.5 boards, 17 points. Not a guy that's really going to pop it too much from three-point range, but that's why you've got Tyler McGee shooting 39% from 3, 8 steals per game, 16.5 points per contest. And while these teams have been very rock solid and efficient on the offensive side of things, both of these teams have been able to step to the plate with regards to their defense as well. For UC San Diego, they're 61st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but Utah State, they are 27th. And for this Utah State unit, they've got a really nice home court advantage as well. Hayden Gray, he's been one of the best players in terms of generating steals in all of college basketball, 3.8 steals per game. As a matter of fact, I believe that leads all of college basketball, but I do think that in this circumstance, it's going to be just a little bit too big of a step up in competition for UC San Diego. And additionally, Uba Gaserse has been very efficient on both offense and defense down low for Utah State. 9 points, 5 boards, currently shooting 76.5% from the floor with Utah State. I do think that they find a way to persevere. Team has allowed 67 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games, so I'm willing to lay up to 8 with Utah State. And then with regards to total, set mine at a 146.5 because I mentioned it. Both of these offenses have been really efficient, but the way that Utah State holding teams down, and UC San Diego is a team that's in the bottom half of all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game. They've held 4 of their last 5 opponents to 60 points or fewer as well, so in on the under, and willing to lay up to 8 with Utah State. 647, 648 on the betting board. Oregon State is going to be playing against Sacramento St. Sacramento State, 19.5 to 20.5 point underdogs. Total on this game between 130 to 130.5. Oregon State, the last team to fail to cover a game thus far this season. They have covered every one of their games. I think that they keep it going here. I'm willing to lay up to 20 with Oregon State for the Sacramento State bunch. They've just had a tough time taking care of the ball. Once again, in the bottom half of all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game, they're looking to play relatively slow and controlled. And Jacob Holt has been very good as a versatile piece for this team. 15.5 points, right around about 6.3 boards at 6'10", shooting 36.5% from three-point range, but not getting a lot of help from the backcourt as the team is turning the ball over 14.7 times per game. When you're a low-tempo team, that just cannot happen. E.J. Neal along with Julian Vaughns, both of these guys have been able to combine for about 21 points per game. And Vaughns is shooting about 38.5% for three-point range. Was dealing with a little bit of an injury towards the beginning part of the season. Has been fully healthy recently. He's been able to do a rock-solid job for this team, but there's just no way that this team is going to be able to stay up with Michael Rataj, a 6'9" versatile piece who's right now for Oregon State giving you 16 points, 8.5 boards, 2 assists, shooting 37% from three-point range, and he has supplied the team with 7 steals in the last 2 games as well, so he's doing a plus job on both the offensive and defensive side of things. Additionally, it's just so hard to go to Corvallis as well. It's not an easy place to be able to travel to, so it's a nice home court advantage for the Beavs as well. For Oregon State, the team has been tremendous with regards to their defense, 10th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Sacramento State, that's supposed to be their bread and butter with how slowly they play, but they're currently 213th in the country with regards to points allowed per possession. We'll say they're actually giving up fewer points per possession on the road rather than at home, but having to keep up with Nate Kings along DeMarco Minor, who have been very major, combining for 21 points per game, with Minor 6 assists, 2.5 steals per game. Kings is shooting 56% from three-point range. It is an Oregon State team that turns the ball over about 12.5 times per game, but nowhere near as much as Sacramento State. And for the Sacramento State team, it's just been poultry with regards to their offense. Last time this team scored more than 63 points in a game, you have to go back to Thanksgiving. That would be the 24th of November. Other than that, that is the only time that they've been able to break the 70-point plateau against a Division I team all season long. I do think that Oregon State is going to do a rock-solid job with their defense, but as we know, this is an Oregon State team that's able to light you up on offense as well. I did, as a result, set my total at a 130.5. At a 130 or less in on the over with Oregon State, and I'm willing to lay the 19.5, willing to go up to 20 with the summer. Here's another game I'll write up, 649, 650 on the card. It is Stanford and the playoffs in Merrimack. The Merrymen are 15.5 to 16-point underdogs. So this game is 138.5. Semi-total at 131. I'm in on the under. For Merrimack, they're not quite generating as many turnovers as they have in past years. Last year, they were number 1 in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per-possession basis. They're more in the mid-60s this season, but still think that they're going to be able to slow this game down. They are outside the top 350 in terms of total possessions per game. Stanford hovering more around about 200th in that range, but they're still been able to play some pretty rock-solid defense, and they've been having their numbers warped a little bit by playing against Cal Poly, by playing against Santa Clara, Cal. They've been playing against a bunch of up-tempo teams recently, so I think that this is going to be a little bit of a dial-back game, which is why I did write up the under. Now, Maximine Reynaud is going to be a big, giant issue for this Merrimack team. 22 points, 11.5 boards at 7'1". He's shooting 40% from 3 with a steal and a half and a block per contest. And then Jalen Blakes has just been really efficient with the ball. 16 points, 5.5 assists per game, and this is a Stanford team that is really going to tussle this Merrimack team because they are the opposite of Merrimack. They don't necessarily do the world's greatest job on defense in terms of just getting up in your grill, although they do still generate about 8 steals per game. So to their credit, they still do generate some turnovers, but they're not playing that super duper pressure defense like you're going to be finding from Merrimack, but they just take good care of the ball. 9.6 turnovers per game in terms of turnovers per possession. A top 45 team in all of college basketball. You're starting to see Chisom Okpara give you a little bit more as well. 8+ points in each of the last 3 games for the Harvard transfer. And then for Merrimack, Adam Clark, he's a do-it-all guy that is really going to try to keep Merrimack afloat in this one. 5 assists, 2 steals, 20 points per game, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. And for Merrimack, to their credit, they do a nice job of holding on to the ball themselves. They're only turning the ball over about 10 times per game. You're going to need to get something down low, though, because with Maximine Reynaud, his size is just really unmatched by anyone on this team. Sean Trumper, Brian Entomino, these are 2 guys that stand right around about 6'7". They're combining between the 2 of them for 11 rebounds per game, but Reynaud by himself gives you about 11 rebounds per game. You're looking to our Mirandis Planutis, who's been only able to give you about 3 points per game, to be able to rise up a little bit more. He's been able to give the team about 35% from from three-point range, but thought that he would take a little bit of a bigger jump this season, though Devon Savage, who had a little bit of a rough start to the season, he's now been able to give the team more around about 9.5 points per game, double figures in 4 of the last 5 games, so he's starting to be able to pick it up a tad, but I do think that this is going to be a slow control game. Stanford has been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to generate turnovers themselves, and for this Merrimack team, they come in having allowed 62 points of fear in each of their last 3 games. They did give up a north of 75 spot against ET San Antonio, meet me for the Roadrunners, but in their games involving teams that have been lower tempo, they've really been able to slow things down. They have given up 68 or fewer in all but 3 of their games thus far this season. For Merrimack, still very much woes on offense outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, so writing up the under, and with Stanford set them as a 15-point favorite, so here the 16 will take those points with Merrimack. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra game, 6:51, 6:52. Cal Poly is going to be playing against Denver. Denver is a 10.5 to an 11-point dog, and your total on this game, it is 163. So about line at 12, I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This has come up from the opener that was more around 9 to 9.5, but still think that you have some value here because for Denver, this has been an all sorts of rough season. For Denver, last year they were just a terrible defense, but they were a pretty solid offense as they had the top scorer in all of college basketball last year, as you could just look to Tommy Bruner to give you a 25 a night. You're not looking at that anymore. So now Denver having a 292nd ranked defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, that gets exposed quite a bit more. And it's not to say that Cal Poly has been some sort of amazing team with regards to their defense, but they do create a lot of havoc. Cal Poly right now 285th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Cal Poly, the big issue that you do have with this team, they're outside the top 320 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis, but when they do get those clean possessions, it turns into beautiful offense. They're in the top 175 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and for Denver right now, they're checking in at 264th, and they're scoring about 17.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're on the road rather than when they are at home. For Denver, it's big that they have Isaiah Carr currently out of the fold as well, true 7-footer that could be able to control things down low against a Cal Poly team that really doesn't have a lot of size. Owen Kuntz is right now giving you 5.5 rebounds, 18 points per game. He's been their top guy there. Meanwhile, without Isaiah Carr in there, your main guy down low in terms of grabbing rebounds is Nicholas Shangbunyo, who's been giving you 4.5 boards, 14 points per game at 6'1". Like, this is a Denver team that is completely breadth of size. Even Tuki Tanamo last year was a guy that was able to space out the floor. You've been able to have Pedro Lopez San Vicente, who's been able to give you about 4 boards, 7 points per game, and he's shooting 39% from three-point range. He's a rock solid player at 6'8", but really doesn't grab a lot of rebounds. It has been a Denver team that has been shooting about 34% from three-point range, with DeAndre 3000 Craig giving you 12.5 points per game. But I do think that with Cal Poly, just all that you're able to get in the backcourt with Gerard Hyder, Isaac Jessup being able to both give you about 14 points per contest. Both of these guys have been able to supply a very similar about 14 points, 2.5 to 3 assists per game. Jessup currently out of the lineup, so that's been hurting them quite a bit, but in his absence, you've been seeing the rise of Mac Rinker, who's been able to supply 11 points per game, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range, double figures in 4 of the last 5 games, but more importantly, in the absence, he has been able to really pick it up in terms of facilitation. 4+ assists in 3 out of the last 4 games. That's helping Cal Poly be able to reduce those turnovers just a little bit. I think that Cal Poly going to take it to a Denver team that, let's call it what it is. It has been a little bit of a up and down season for them. They've had their triumphs, like knocking out Sacramento St by 20+ points, and then they go on the road and they scored 59 points against a really bad Cal State Fullerton team. Meanwhile, you've got a Cal Poly unit that has gone to at least 82 points in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that this is going to be very much an up and down game. Semi-total at 162. Do think that now that we're starting to get to right around about a 163, it's just kind of touched too far. So in on the under on 163, and I'm willing to lay the 10.5 to 11 with Cal Poly. Now we get the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-511, 306-512. It is Stetson. They're on the road against LSU, and LSU a 24.5 to a 25.5 point favorite. Total on this game between 150 to 150.5. Said LSU is a 23-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them on to a number with Stetson. Now for Stetson, it's been very much less than savory for them. They are outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Last year, they were a team that really lived and died by their three-point shooting, and they do have Jordan Wood, who comes in as a versatile guy from Howard at right around 6'8", 6'9". He's giving you 12.5 points. He's able to pop it from three-point range, but team as a whole is turning the ball over 15 times per game despite being a low-tempo team. They're shooting 33% from three-point range. You don't necessarily have a ton down low. You've got a trio of guys that give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. Abramo Kanka has been able to give you those 5.5 boards. He's been able to chip in there about 10.5 points per game. You've also been able to get that out of Jamie Phillips as well, but he's been out since Thanksgiving, so that means that their depth has taken a little bit of a blow, and that meant that Tristan Gross had to get more minutes, and he's been solid in that role. 8 points, about 4 boards, shooting 40.5% from three-point range, but you just don't really have a main low-post guy for this team. Meanwhile, Corey Chess, he's able to give you 8.5 rebounds per game. Still do have a few question marks with this LSU offense, though, as well. They are turning the ball over too much for their own good. They're turning the ball over 14 times per game. They only shoot about 31% from three-point range, despite the fact that their top 2 scorers in Cam Carter, Jordan Sears, they're combined for 32.5 points per game. They're shooting a combined about 40% from three-point range, but need a little bit more facilitation as Deji Bailey, who comes in from Richmond. He's giving the team 10 points, 3 assists per contest. Outside of their main starting 5, though, you don't necessarily get the world's greatest amount of contributions as well. It's going to be interesting to see what Damian Collins does as well. A former top 50 recruit. He's been giving the team about 7 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. Has tremendous, just gifted athleticism, but at the same time as well, has not really been able to put it together. So, do you think we've gone a little bit too far here? I set my line at 23. I'm going to be willing to take the 24.5 to 25 with Stetson. I did make my total of 151, so also in on the over. 306.513, 306.514. Howard is going to be playing us at Drexel. Drexel, a 1 to 1.5 point road favorite, and your total on this game, it is 145 to 145.5. Made Drexel a 2.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Drexel. I just believe that this defense is going to be able to win out against our team that likes to run it and gun it. They like to play a little bit more harebrained, but this Drexel team, I think, is going to be able to rein it in, and with Howard's style, it just leads to so many turnovers for them. They are once again outside the top 275 in terms of ball security. Now, you do have some supremely talented guys, like you're able to get 16.5 plus points per game out of Marcus Dockery. He's been able to shoot 48% from three-point range, but again, the turnovers to be able to get those wide open threes are very costly. 14.7 turnovers per game. Team is shooting 41% from three-point range, but they do run into a Drexel team that, once again, back in the top 110 in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. And for Drexel, they're now a top 130 team in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis. Look more specifically in a road/intracourt venue. This team has been a top 40 offense in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis. So I've really been liking what I've been seeing there. Now, you do have Yami Butler, who 2 seasons ago shot north of 40% from three-point range for them. Hasn't been quite the same this far this season, but still supplying 13.5 points per game on 37.5% three-point shooting. He's only out right around about 2.5 assists per contest. And then Cole Hargrave down low, 11.5 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists per game. Losing Amari Williams was tough, but he's been able to do a nice job of making sure that that blow has been absorbed quite a bit for Drexel. Once again, going back to the three-point shooting defense, allowing opponents on the road to shoot 30.5% from three, overall 28.6% from three-point range. That's a top 35 mark in all of college basketball. Kobe McGee has been able to give you about 16 points per game. He's shooting 45.5% from three-point range. It's a Drexel team that they do have some turnover woes, about 12.5 turnovers per game. They're not a team that's really going to be pushing a lot of tempo, and outside of their main starting 5, you've got 1 or 2 guys that are able to come in off the bench. Shane Blakeney has been able to give you about 8.5 points, 4 rebounds per game, but this team stays smart. They do a good job of not necessarily fouling overly much, and I do think that they find a way against our team that down low, they're still waiting for some of these guys to come back, as Blake Harper has been your top rebounder with 6.5 boards per contest. You've been able to have a lot of versatility in general when he's been out there from Bryce Harris, who was giving the team 6 rebounds per game before dealing with a little bit of injury. We have not seen him really since Thanksgiving, so that's been hurting them quite a bit. And we have not seen the gentleman that began his career over at Syracuse, along Duquesne as well, and Hima, hopefully I said that correctly, just has not been able to get out there on the floor for this team, and that has been hurting them quite a bit. So I do look at Drexel as being able to get the job done in this spot. I set them as the 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Do think that they're going to slow this game down as well, and I do think that there's going to be lots of turnovers in this game. Set my total 142.5. Also in on the under. 306.515, 306.516. UNC Asheville is going to be playing us in North Florida. North Florida, the mighty Osprey are 2 to 2.5 point underdogs. Totals between 158 to 158.5. Set my total 164.5. I'm in on the over. This is a North Florida team that they absolutely love to play up tempo, and they absolutely love to bomb it from three-point range. They were the only team in all of college basketball last year that took north of 51% of their field goal attempts from three-point range. Once again, they've been one of the top teams in terms of percentage shots from three-point range this year, and they're also getting cooked defensively from beyond the arc. When they're away from home, they're allowing opponents to shoot 38.9% from three-point range, and I do think that we are going to get ourselves very much an up and down game because you've got a UNC Asheville team that is not shy to run as well, especially with now this being a little bit more of a guard-laden team. No longer do you have guys like Nicholas McMillan. No longer do you have Drew Pember from a season ago. This team is in the top 90 with regards to total possessions per game. And for North Florida, by the way, total possessions per game, right now they're checking in 20th in all of college basketball. But when it comes to Josh Banks, what you're able to get out of him in the backcourt, he's been able to supply this team with 15-plus points per contest. Fletcher Abey, ever since getting to UNC Asheville, began his career over at the Citadel. 40-plus% three-point shooter. He's been able to do a nice job, be able to chip in there right around about 12 points per game. And then Tejas Solomon has been able to supply the team with 7 boards, 14 points per contest. He shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range as well for Asheville. They do a relatively solid job of taking care of the ball, 12 turnovers per game. Considering the tempo, that's not necessarily too bad for North Florida. It's been all about Josh Harris leading the way with 16.5 points per game, but you've got legitimately 5 different guys. They're able to give you at least 12.5 points per game. You don't necessarily have a ton down low. Harris has been able to give you 7 boards per contest, and then you've got Josiah Miles, who's stands 6'6", good versatility, 2 assists, 7.5 boards, 14 points per contest, and with Harris, he's currently shooting 53% from three-point range. And then Nate Lateris, Liam Murphy, both of these guys stand in that neighborhood about 6'6" and 6'7". They're combined shoot 45% from 3. They've been able to combine for about 10 or so rebounds per game. Very top-heavy team, though, because outside of those main 5, you've got one other player that gives you north of 4.5 points per game, and Cameron Oriel. He is 6'3", and he's been able to supply the team with about 33% three-point shooting himself. But I do think that overall, just the lack of defense that we see from North Florida, as North Florida has now given up at least 77 points in each of their last 4 games, and this UNC Asheville team really being able to ascend with their offense. They've gone past 78 points in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that you get an up and down game. I do think that UNC Asheville does a little bit of a better job of hitting the glass and being able to guard the 3-point line. So I'm going to be in on this little over, set my total 164.5, and want to lay up to 4 with Asheville 306-517, 306-518. Southern is on the road. They're playing against Ole Miss. Another game that'll right up, as Ole Miss is a 23.5 point favorite. The last game between 143.5 to 144.5. I wrote up the over in this game. I set my total at a 154.5. With Ole Miss, this team has been so efficient on offense. Top 25 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They do go up against a Southern team that has been outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed per possession. Now, for Southern, they do a rock solid job of being able to generate turnovers, but problem is Ole Miss, in terms of turnovers on a per-possession basis, number 1 team in all of college basketball. They're doing a great job of being able to protect the rock. You've had Matthew Morrell deal with injuries, but he and Dre Davis have come back. These 2 guys have been able to combine for about 24 points per contest. Neither of these guys shooting it well from three-point range, but that's why you've got Jalen Murray and Sean Padula. These 2 guys, between the 2 of them, nearly 8 assists, 3.7 steals, and over 27.5 points per game, both shooting north of 44% from three-point range. Mikal Brown-Jones has been able to give you about 7 points per game. He last year, when he was over at UNC Greensboro, was shooting well north of 42% from 3, hasn't duplicated that thus far this season, but you've got a Southern team that they should be able to make a few threes themselves. I like what I've been seeing out of the backcourt of this team with the main point guard for the season, Tijane Diomasi, being able to give you 4.5 assists, 4 boards, 9.5 points per game, and he does shoot in the mid-30s from three-point range. This for a Southern unit that they've been able to protect the ball relatively well as well. 11.5 turnovers per game. They shoot 35% from three-point range. You've been able to get right around about 11 points per game out of Jordan Johnson as well, like what he's able to bring to the table. But this is also a unit that is going to be completely outgunned down low. Even though Ole Miss doesn't necessarily have ideal size for Southern, you don't have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, as Damari Jones has been that main guy. He's been able to supply the team with about 4.8 rebounds per game, but he only stands right around 6'6", and though Ole Miss doesn't necessarily have a ton of guys with size, you've got like Jamin Brakefield, who stands right around about 6'8", and even though they're going to be able to win the battle down low, they're not going to completely dominate it. And additionally, at home, Ole Miss is allowing opponents to shoot right around about 33% from three-point range. That should be able to keep Southern just enough in this game to be able to cover this number. I set my number at 818, so I'm willing to take the points. I do think that both of these teams are going to be making a lot of open threes, as Southern made themselves outside the top 200 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage when they've been on the road this season. They've been allowing opponents to shoot right around about 34.5% from three-point range. So in on the over, wrote that up, and we'll take the points with Southern. 306-519, 306-520. It is Quinnipiac. They play us Holy Cross, and Holy Cross does find themselves as a wholly sized underdog of 9 points total on this game, between 143 to 144, and semi-total 146.5. I'm going to be in on this total over with Quinnipiac. This has been an up-tempo team when they've been fully healthy. Their offense has been a little bit more muted because they've been dealing with quite a few injuries, the main injury being to Savion Lewis. That is their point guard, who last year was totaling out north of 7 assists per game, has missed the last 3 or 4 games for Quinnipiac. The expected return from was this game, though. Now, you want to be checking in on this beforehand, but There were interviews with the coaching staff. They were all saying that the target date for him to be able to return was in this game, and Lewis hasn't looked like himself when he's been out there on the court, as he last played against Sacred Heart about a week or so ago. In that game, he was able to give out 7 assists, but he had as many points as myself. But I do think that he's going to be able to come back in this game. He's going to be able to give you a relatively good, solid effort, and you have them pair up with Paul Otinho along with Amari Morin. That could be pretty lethal, as these two guys combine for about 14.5 rebounds per game. They're giving you 26 points per game, and Otinho has been able to shoot 36.5% from 3 for a Quinnipiac team that last year they shot north of 34% from 3. This year they're shooting just 26% from 3. I think that they've been one of the biggest victims of bad variance this far this season. Meanwhile, Holy Cross was relatively rough from 3-point range last season. They've been able to improve quite a bit. They're shooting about 36.5% from the outside, even with Gabe Warren playing in just 2 games this season. 6'6" Max Green has stepped up in a big way, 2.5 assists, 13.5 points per game. You now have a little bit more of a main facilitator in Tyler Boston as well, who's been able to dole out 4 assists, 9 points per game. He's currently shooting 81.8% from 3-point range. Truth be told, as you can probably imagine, it's on a very small sample size that is going to be coming down, but I do think that for Holy Cross, they're going to have a little bit of a tough time in this one, because even though their offense has been looking much better than it did a season ago, they're still turning the ball over about 12.5 times per game for 1 and 2. This is a Quinnipiac team that, with getting back Savion Lewis, I think that they're going to be much more sound with regards to not just their facilitation, but their 3-point shooting defense. Right now, they're allowing opponents to shoot 35% from 3-point range. Last year, they were pretty rock solid at being able to guard the arc, and Holy Cross, they themselves allowing opponents on the road to shoot 35.5% from 3-point range. They've been well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Recently has been quite a bit better for them, giving up fewer than 70 points 3 of their last 4 games. But one of those games was against Virginia, in which they only scored 41 points in that one as well. And for the Quinnipiac offense, even without Savion Lewis, they've been able to get to 70 on the regular. I do think that they find a way to persevere against Holy Cross with now getting back to full staff. So I'm willing to lay up to 10 with Quinnipiac. Did set my total 146.5, so also in on the over. 3-6-5-21, 3-6-5-22. Charlotte is going to be playing against West Georgia. And West Georgia does find themselves as pretty sizable underdogs of 15 points. Total on this game between 137.5 to a 138. Semi-line at 15.5. I'm really not willing to go past the 15 with Charlotte, but I'm going to be willing to lay the 15, as West Georgia has just had a miserable run of things coming up to the D1 ranks, and they really only had 1 or 2 guys coming into the season that had ever played at the Division I level, and it's clearly showing. They also don't necessarily have a lot of size, as well as Sheldon Williams-Dryden, who's saying 6'10". He's essentially the tallest player on the roster, other than Ricky Ballard, who's been giving you only about 2.5 rebounds per game, but Williams-Dryden, relatively good versatility, 17.5 points, 7.5 boards for a West Georgia unit that they need all the 3-point shooting that they can get. And right now, shooting 29% from 3-point range. Williams-Dryden has not really went outside and popped it from 3-point range. Malcolm Noel has been able to, though. He's been able to shoot 41.5% from 3-point range. He's been able to supply the team with 8.5 points per game. The problem for our good friend Mr. Noel is that he has been missing for 6 games, has been able to return in the last 2, was able to play against Tennessee Tech at 13 points. That was his second best performance of the year, so looks like he's going to be back in full force in this one. But on the flip side, you've got a Charlotte team that they themselves have dealt with a few injuries. Nika Mitska-Richvili, the top scorer over at Louisiana Monroe, who transferred in, he was injured to begin the season, has been playing very limited minutes thus far, but even in his accidents, you've had good versatility with Robert Briswell, Giancarlo Rosado, a pair of guys that stand right around 6'7" to 6'8", combining for north of 20.5 points per game. Rosado is giving you 4 assists, a steal per contest, while Briswell is shooting 45% from 3-point range. That's just size that West Georgia is not going to be able to match up with. Kylan Blackman has been able to give you about 5 points, a assist or 2 per contest as well, but it's been Nick Graves who's really been able to headline the backcourt. Not shooting well from 3-point range, but gives you 16 points, 3.5 assists per game, does a nice job of being able to cut to the hole, and for the Charlotte team, top 25 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Now they themselves are going to allow you a lot of clean and open possessions, and for West Georgia, they just have not been able to shut teams down. 73 plus points allowed in each of the last 5 games. Meanwhile, the Charlotte team, they are outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. Despite that, they've still been able to do a nice job with their offense, getting to at least 70 points in 4 of their last 5 games. So it's an interesting circumstance with regards to the total. I did set mine at a 135.5. I do think that Charlotte going to slow this game down, even though West Georgia has been very inefficient on the defensive side of things, well outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I do think that Charlotte going to see a little bit of regression with their ancillary scores from 3-point range, so I'm in on the under. I set my total at 135.5, but with Charlotte, willing to lay up to 15 with them. 3 of 6, 523, 3 of 6, 524. Florida State plays us with Winthrop. Winthrop finds themselves as a double-figure underdog. You're going to be catching between 11 to 11.5 with Winthrop, and totals between 157.5 to a 158. And I'm in on the under. I did set my total at a 153.5. Winthrop has been playing at a pretty breakneck pace. They're in the top 40 in terms of total possessions per game, and Florida State has not been shy to run as well, but this Florida State team has been a top 75 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and you do have a Winthrop team that's turned the ball over north of 13 times per game. I think that that's going to be the biggest folly for this Winthrop team, as I did set my line at 11.5. I'm willing to lay up to 11 with a Florida State unit that seems to be finding a little bit more around Jameer Watkins, who's been the heart and soul of this team. 18.5 points, 4.5 boards, steal 1.5 per game, not shooting it well from three-point range, but you've been able to have a 39% three-point shooter in Justin Thomas, who was a reserve player for UW-Milwaukee 2 years ago and just completely missed all of last year due to injury. You've been able to get right around about 5 boards, 7 points per game out of Tyler Bowen as well, so he's been rock solid. But Malik Ewan, who is rated by JUCORecruiting.com as the number 1 junior college transfer in all of college basketball, 7 boards, 12 points per game after it was a little bit slow going for him to start the season. He's really been able to take over things down low. He's been able to supply 7+ rebounds so far the last 5 games. Now he's fouled out in each of the last 2 games as well, but starting to give you some shot blocking as well, so that's been able to make things much more difficult for opponents in the interior, and that's big because this Winthrop team, they are looking to be able to drive the ball inside quite a bit, as you've got a pair of guys in KJ Doucette along with Kelton Telford, who both have some size. They're right around about 6'7" apiece. They're combining for about 30 points, 14 rebounds per game, and Doucette has been able to shoot 45.5% from 3-point range, but for Winthrop, they are looking for those points on the inside because they're only shooting about 30.5% from 3-point range as a collective. You've had Casey Harrison be able to step up, shooting the mid-30s from 3-point range, 14 points, 3 assists per game, but with 13.5 turnovers per game, they are a little bit costly. Winthrop has been able to do a relatively solid job of guarding from the outside as well, so that's a big reason why I did set my total 153.5. I'm going to be in on the under. And for Florida State, not like this has been some sort of amazing offense or anything like that, especially when they've been going up against, shall we say, better competition, but defense has been able to lock down in a big way as well. In regulation, they have given up 70 points for fewer and for their last 5 games. That excludes the overtime session against NC State, so I do think that things are going to be dialed back just a little bit more in this game. I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 11 with Florida State. 3 of 6, 525, 3 of 6, 526. Georgia Southern is playing us to Gardner-Webb, and Gardner-Webb does find themselves as a underdog of 3 points. Total on this game is 151 to 151.5. With Georgia Southern, I did set them as a 4.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This Georgia Southern team does need to clean up their turnover issues, as they've been turning the ball over north of 15 times per game, but not like you don't have your issues with Gardner-Webb either. This is a Gardner-Webb team that has brought back a lot of the guys that transferred out of the program in recent years, as Anthony Sullivan 2 seasons ago was a double-figure scorer for the team. Last year he was at Rice. Now he's a boomerang transfer that's been able to give you about 15.5 points, throwing in there a block per contest, and then you've been able to have Jermaine Mann, who he's been out of the program for like 3 years. He's come back, he's given the team 11 points per contest, shooting in the low 30s from 3-point range for a Gardner-Webb team that, I talk about the turnover issues with Georgia Southern, 16.5 turnovers per game. They don't have a single guy in the roster that's giving you really north of 2.2 assists per game. They just have not been able to find that main trigger man, and outside of Selden, along with Mann, throw in there as well Daryl Simmons, who's been able to give you 15 points per contest. Really nobody else on the roster giving north of 6 points per contest. It's been a lot more of just a hodgepodge from there. Meanwhile, for Georgia Southern, they don't have that main go-to guy, especially with Andre 3000 Hallman currently being out. He transferred in from UT Rio Grande Valley, but got a quartet of guys who will be able to give you at least 8 points per game. Bradley Douglas, who comes in from Little Rock, has been a double-figure scorer. Dante Horn has been able to supply that team with about 8 to 8.5 points per game, along with Aaron Banks as well. But really like what I'm seeing out of Naquan White. He was a junior college transfer, JUCORecruiting.com, rated top 75 guy. He's been able to come in and shoot 39% from 3-point range, 4.5 boards, pair of assists per game, so he's been able to do a nice job just flowing this good, clean offense. Avante Parker, he has been out for the last 4 or so games. He's been able to pull in there when he's been in the lineup, 5 rebounds per game. There's a good chance that he should be able to go in this one. And then you've got Eugene Brown, who in the interim, he's been able to supply a little bit of versatility, coming in for Ohio State with about 4.5 rebounds per game, but not necessarily what the Georgia Southern team was hoping for. But with the way that Gardner-Webb turns the ball over so much, much, and with the way that they have been getting just flat out bludgeoned on defense, they have now given up at least 78 points in each of their last 4 games. For Georgia Southern, they themselves have had a little bit of rough go of it on defense, but I do think that for Georgia Southern, they're going to do a nice job of being able to force Gardner Webb into a bunch of turnovers. Gardner Webb has a little bit more size with Isaiah Richardson being able to pull in their 8 rebounds per game, but Georgia Southern getting a little bit healthier in the interior. Do think that they get the job done in this one. Set my line at 4.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it in. Did set my total at 146.5. I think that there's going to be a ton of just turnovers in this game that are costly to the over. So in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay the 3 with Georgia Southern. 3 of 6.527, 3 of 6.528. It is Maryland, and they play us to St. Francis of Pennsylvania. St. Francis is a 34 to 34.5 point underdog. Totals between 145 to a 146. I've been liking what I'm seeing out of this Maryland team. This has just gone a little bit too far for me, though. I'm going to be willing to take the 34 with St. Francis of Pennsylvania with Bobby Rosenberger. He's been a really nice, versatile piece. He's been able to give this team 12-plus points per contest, and I do think that he's going to help this St. Francis team that has been rather pesky recently be able to hold in this one. As for St. Francis, there's no question about it. They're going to be giving up a lot on the interior, as they right now rank outside the top 330 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but they have been a top 150 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And Maryland has been able to up their 3-point shooting quite a bit, with Jacoby Gillespie coming in from Belmont. He's given the team north of 3 assists per game, double-figure amount of points, shooting it well from 3-point range. And when it comes to Derek Queen, he's been very much the king down low, being able to give you 8-plus rebounds per game along Julian Reese. These 2 guys have been able to really play well off of one another. And for Celton Miguel, even though he hasn't shot it as well from 3-point range this year as he did while he was over at South Florida, he's been able to do a nice job, give the team some nice defense, running their 10 points per game. He's now up to about 37% 3-point shooting with a nice rise over the last few games. And for Maryland, they're just keeping it clean. They're turning the ball over 9.8 times per contest. Rodney Rice shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range as well. But I do like what Riley Parker has been bringing to the St. Francis of Pennsylvania team. He's been able to give them that main facilitator that they've been so badly needing, as he's zoning out 4.5 assists, fewer than 2.5 turnovers per game. He has been really able to ascend as the season went along, as he's been able to put up double figures, 14-plus points in 4 out of the team's last 5 games. And he's done a lot of this without turning the ball over, as in the last 3 games, he has had a combined 19 assists to 2 turnovers. So that's been pretty impressive for a St. Francis team that so well outside the top 225 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and against E1 competition, 70 or fewer for them in 3 of their last 4 games. But I do think that they're going to hold in there against a Maryland team that obviously has been very good with regards to their offense, being able to build now a top 40 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. But you got Jeremy Cleveland has been able to give you about 9 points per game. This team is going to lose that battle down low, but I think that they do just enough in terms of being able to guard the perimeter to be able to hang in this one. It's the St. Francis Pennsylvania team that obviously is not very up-tempo either. So in this circumstance, did set my total at a 144.5. Here I'd right around about a 145.5, 146. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the under and the points with St. Francis. 36.529, 36.530. It is Lamar, and they're going to be on the road against Southern Miss. Southern Miss, a home underdog of 3 points, and your total on this game is 138.5. I actually do like Southern Miss all right on the money line. Set them as a 2-point favorite. Now, for Southern Miss, things have gotten very much less than savory for them. They have been without Andre Corbell the last few games, as he's currently out indefinitely due to a suspension. I don't know what he got suspended for, but I just know that he is suspended, and without him, this has been a Southern Miss team that has been absolutely awful with regards to their offense. Without him, they have been able to put up 66 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games, but this is also a Lamar unit that they've really been able to up it with regards to their defense. They've given up 65 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games. Alvin Brooks has been able to do a great job with that regard. It is a Southern Miss team that typically when Andre Corbell is out there, they really look to push tempo. Without him, they slow things down. So I did set my total at 136 as a result. I'm in on the under for Alexis Marmayoles. He has really been the headline guy for this Lamar team. 2.5 assists, 16 points per game, shooting 40% from 3 points. But you've got a 48.5% 3-point shooter, Andrew Holyfield. He's come in from the non-D1 ranks. He's been able to supply about 11.5 points per game for a Lamar team that does need to clean up the turnovers a bit, about 13 turnovers per contest, despite being a lower tempo team. But for Southern Miss, I think is going to be key for them winning that battle down low, because you do have Adam Hamilton on the side of Lamar, giving you about 6.5 rebounds per game. It's been a little bit limited on offense, but has been able to grab some offensive rebounds. But Dennis J. Harris, who last year was over at Arkansas, he's been really good down low with 15 points, 9 boards, stands right around 6'7", has good versatility. He's able to shoot 38% from 3-point range, and with Corbell out of the lineup, that means that Natalie Alvarez has the ball in his hands quite a bit. Not a guy that's going to give you a whole heck of a lot in terms of a scoring perspective, but does give out 3.5 assists. The turnovers of 2.7 per contest, just a little bit too high. This is a Southern Miss team that's outside the top 3 here in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. 15.5 turnovers per game, but you're going to be able to find these guys like a D'Antoni Gordon, Christian Watson, Kobe Montgomery, give you between about 9 to 9.5 points per game. I think that is going to be just enough in this ordeal to get past the Lamar team that has been turning the ball over a little bit too much. They lost so much of that backcourt from a season ago as well, and even though they've been able to do a pretty solid job down low, I think that Najee Harris is going to be able to win that battle for Southern Miss. So, do like Southern Miss outright on the money line, so my total at 136, I'm in on the under. 306-531, 306-532. Louisiana Monroe plays us Houston Christian, an underdog of 5.5 to 6 points. Balance game is 140. I'm in on the under. I set my total at 135, and we have to reset the numbers on Houston Christian because when you had Ron Cottrell in the fold as the coach for this team, this was one of the most up-tempo teams in all of college basketball. Houston Christian now this year, they are ranking 335th in terms of total possessions per game as Craig Doty, he comes in from Emporia State where they were always a very slow and controlled team and has been preaching that thus far this season. Now, when it comes to this Houston Christian team, not a lot of size down low. You've been able to have Elijah Brooks, who comes in from North Dakota. He's been able to give the team double figures. He's been able to supply the team with about 4.5 to 5 rebounds per game. But for Louisiana Monroe, they should be able to win that battle down low. Here's the issue that you've got for Louisiana Monroe. They are outside the top 280 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis because they really just don't have too much of a backcourt. You've been able to have a little bit of versatility with Jalen Bolden, being able to supply the team with about 12 to 13 points per game. But Monroe last year, one of the worst teams in all of college basketball with regards to three-point shooting percentage. It's gotten a little bit better this year at 31.9%, but you still have a lot to be desired. They've been able to have Colty Young, who comes in from Jackson State. He's actually been their main man from the outside, shooting 42.5% from 3, 10.5 points per game. So he's given them a nice shot in the arm, including a combined 41 points in the last 2 games. And then down low, you've been able to have Idu Didiero. He comes over from UAB. Didiero has been able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game along Jerry Nadeau pot, but I mean, it's really been about the 6.5 boards, 10 points per game out of Mekhi Willis, who's been able to help this team ascend. He's come in as a 6'8" transfer from Fairfield, and he's really been able to give this team a nice post presence. Try to pop it from 3-point range. Has not necessarily been successful there, but for Therese Watson, it's all about just being able to flow cleaner offense. Right now, 13.5 turnovers per game for a Louisiana Monroe team that's in the bottom half of all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game. Do you think that this is going to be a slow and controlled slog in this one? Neither of these teams necessarily amazing with their defense, but for this Houston Christian team, does feel like they're starting to find their bearings just a little bit more. And then for this Louisiana Monroe team, they themselves have really not been able to exceed the 70-point plateau stands against Arkansas Pine Bluff against D1 competition all season long. I did set my line at 5, so being able to catch 6, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Houston Christian. As Houston Christian has covered, I believe, all but 2 of their games this far this season, so willing to take the points, and I'm going to be in on this total under 306-533, 306-534. Boise State is playing us to Texas Southern, and Texas Southern does find themselves as 22 to 23 point underdogs. 148 to 148.5 is the total, and for Boise State, I set them as 19.5 point favorites. I'm going to be willing to take the 20 plus. For Boise State, was expecting a little bit more outside shooting from them than they've received thus far this season, as Tyson Dagenhart has always been a guy with versatility and has never necessarily been an amazing 3-point shooter, but shooting less than 25% this season, that's been a bit of an issue. Now, the backcourt has very much benefited from Alvaro Cardenas coming over from San Jose State. For Cardenas, he's been able to give the team 5.8 assists to about 2 turnovers per game, but team as a whole, they shoot 31% from 3 points, coming off of a massive overtime win against St. Mary's, by the way. Dagenhart, he had some big shots in that one. You've had Austin Meadow be able to supply the team with 6 boards, 11.5 points per game, as Dagenhart and Omar Stanley, they combined for 12 rebounds per game. Stanley only about 9.5 points per game. For Boise State, the lineup is a little bit top heavy, and for Texas Southern, they just need to find a way to be able to hit the boards once again. This is a Texas Southern team that just year in and year out, they're typically a relatively solid team with regards to their defense. On offense, they leave something to be desired, but this year for Texas Southern, they have been absolutely awful at being able to guard the 3-point line, 353rd in all of college basketball. I do think that there's going to be a little bit of positivity coming, but typically the hallmark of this Texas Southern team being like a top 100 or so team with regards to rebound rate. Right now, they're more around about 335th, with Kenny Under being able to supply the team with 10 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. It's a Texas Southern team that with their 34.5% 3-point shooting, that's much better than what we've seen in the past. Kavion McLean leading the way, shooting north of 43% from 3, 14.5 points per game. Kobe Granger, 6'5", do-it-all player, 8 points, 3.5 rebounds. He's right now shooting 46.5% from 3-point range. He's throwing in there a steal per game, as well as Texas Southern, they do need to clean up the fact that they've been turning the ball over about 12.5 times per game. Typically a relatively mid-tempo team. They're back there once again this year, but Jalen Jackson Posey, who comes in from Stephen F. Austin, he was 2 seasons ago a guy that shot about 44.5% from three-point range, and he's giving the team just 3.5 points per game right now. So that's a massive issue for them, for a Texas Southern team that they've just been getting bludgeoned time and time again on the defensive side of things against D1 competition. 87-plus points allowed in 3 of their last 4 games. This is a Boise State team, though, that once again outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. For Boise State, they have failed to exceed the 70-point plateau in 3 of their last 4 games as well. So situation of something's got to give. I do think that things are going to be dialed back just a little bit more in this game. Set my total 148.5, diving in on the under, and at 20+, that is my buy point on Texas Southern. 306-535, 306-536. Colorado State plays us at Radford. Radford is a 11.5 to a 12-point underdog. Total on this game, it is 137, and with Radford, I'm going to be willing to take the points. I felt like they should have been an 8.5-point underdog. For Colorado State, I love Nico Medved as a coach, but it doesn't feel like he's got a good blend with this team, as Bowen Bourne, who comes on over from Northern Iowa, feels like it's been addition by subtraction for Northern Iowa. He's a little bit of a chucker, and he's been able to come in, be able to dole out some relatively good offense, as he's thrown in there about 2.5 or so assists per game, but only about 7 points per contest, shooting less than 30% from three-point range. As well, Colorado State shooting just 31% from the outside, as Niquay Clifford has had to do it all. Without Isaiah Stevens, this team has been very much exposed. 7.5 boards, 17.5 points, 3 assists per game, but it's a Colorado State team that, other than Clifford, you only have one other player that gives you north of 2.8 rebounds per game. Jalen Crooker Johnson was the OVC Rookie of the Year last year. He's given the team about 4.5 rebounds per game, and that should allow Radford to remain very lively in this game. You've got Josiah Harris, who's been able to supply the team with 8 boards, 9 points per game, and then Truth Harris, he has been the truth from the outside, shooting 50% from three-point range with 7 points per game. Brandon Macklin has been able to give you about 2.5 assists, throws in there 6 boards per contest, while Jarvis Moss has been that main off-the-ball scorer, being able to give you about 16 points per game, but he throws in there a steal per contest as well. Radford, year in and year out, typically a relatively rock-solid defense, though they have been outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis this year, but back in the top 125 with regards to defensive rebound percentage. And to the credit of Colorado State, though they're not pulling in any offensive rebounds, they're really not allowing opponents to get second chance opportunities as well. They're more around about 60th to 65th in the country in terms of defensive rebound rate. But with this Colorado State team, they've just clearly fallen off with regards to their offense. Other than Jalen Lake, you don't have a lot of help around Clifford, as Lake has been able to supply the team with about 15 points per contest. But do you think that for Radford, defense is going to hold up in this one? I think that they're going to be looking to dial it back with regards to their tempo. And what a lot of people didn't realize about Colorado State the last few seasons is, even with Isaiah Stevens, they were a very slow and controlled team, and Colorado State has been looking to go up tempo quite a bit more this year. They're more around 100th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but I think that Radford going to reel this back in. I did set my total more around a 134.5. I'm in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to take those points with Radford. 306, 537, 306, 538. Utah plays us with Florida A&M. Florida A&M, a 30 to 31.5 point underdog. Total on this game between 150 to 150.5. Set my line at 30. Now that we're starting to get to 31, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Florida A&M. Florida A&M in a lot of transition because they are under year number 1 of a new coach who comes in from the NAIA ranks over at St. Thomas, and he's been trying to instill a lot of the same principles that he had at the NAIA level as his team in St. Thomas of Texas, was always a good team in terms of shot blocking, in terms of rebounding, and they don't necessarily have the size to be able to do that. As Shaquille O'Neal, that's actually Shaquille O'Neal's son, he's right now leading the way in rebounds with 4.1 per contest, but you tell that just physically this team is outgunned, so they've had to look to three-point shooting to be able to ascend, and of their top 5 scorers, 4 of them are shooting at least 37.5% from 3, including Shaquille O'Neal, shooting for 37.5% three-point shooting at 10 points per game. That's something his father really never did in the NBA, but Sterling Young, who's come in from Charlotte, he's been able to give the team about 13.5 points per game, shoots 43.5% from 3 points. Team is turning the ball over a little bit too much, 13.5 turnovers per game. It's a Florida A&M team that has been, shall we say, very sporadic with regards to their tempo in the last few seasons, and now they've been able to find that nice comfort zone of being a mid-tempo team, about 120th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, this Utah team has just been one of the best three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. They're a top 40 team in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis. They're shooting over 40% from three-point range at home, with Gabe Manson shooting 40% from the outside, 21 points per contest, and his brother Mark Madison now shooting 44% from three-point range. They have quite a bit more down low as well because they were missing for the first 5 games of the season. 7'1" Lawson Lovering. He's come back. He's been able to give the team 7 boards per contest, 2 blocks ever since his return. He's also thrown in there 12 points per game as well. And for Utah, they are playing a little bit outside their comfort zone with how quickly they're playing in. For Utah, even with Lovering being out for quite a while, they were still a top 35 team with regards to rebound percentage. And for Florida A&M, that is going to be doomsday for them, 344th in the country with that regard. But I do think that this is a game that Florida A&M does just enough to be able to hold in on, even though, as we know, Utah, a very difficult place to be able to play. You're at a little bit of elevation. It's a hard place to be able to get to in general. And for this Florida A&M team, they certainly have been giving it up from three-point range, 258th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. So circumstance where I'm going to be in on the over. I set my total at a 152, and won't take anything north of 30 here with Florida A&M. And we wrap things up with 3 at 6.539, 3 at 6.540. UCLA plays us Prairie View. Prairie View is a underdog of 33.5 points. So on this game between 148 to 149, and I wrote this one up as well. I'm willing to take the points with Prairie View. They've really looked much better in their last 2 games. They lose by 1 on the road against Loyola Marymount. No shame there. They lose by 7 to Mississippi State as well. No shame there. So they've lost their last 2 games by combined 8 points against 2 pretty legitimate teams. Now they do have to face off against the UCLA bunch, as currently number 1 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they are number 1 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis as well. And that's really the lifeblood of this Prairie View team. Prairie View, year in and year out, when they're hitting on all cylinders, they're a top 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They haven't been doing quite as much of that this year, but they've cleaned up their act as well. Like typically for Prairie View, while they generate a bunch of turnovers, they themselves give the ball away quite a bit. They're only turning the ball over about 11.5 times per game, and considering they're a top 50 team in terms of total possessions per game, that's not too bad. They're down a little bit with regards to their turnovers, but they're still right around about 125th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Now, when they don't generate a turnover, they have been a ghastly defense while outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Orlando Horton, he's been able to hear a who with about 2.5 assists per game. He's been able to throw in there about 8 points per contest, like what he's been able to bring to the table. And then Nick Anderson, 19 points, 4.5 boards, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. And overall, for Prairie View, they're shooting 33% from three-point range, which is much better than where they have been in past years. Now, they're going to get completely bludgeoned down low. They no longer have Brian Miles from a season ago, so Tyler Billadu, who's been able to spy for this UCLA team, 13.5 points, 5.5 boards. At 6'8", he's been able to give them really nice versatility, shooting 35.5% from three-point range. He should be able to take it to this Prairie View team, but it's not like UCLA has been some sort of amazing three-point shooting team. They've been quite a bit better recently. They were able to hit a bunch of shots in that game against Oregon. Dylan Andrews has been able to shoot 36% from 3 in the Daily Show. Eric Daly is currently shooting 45% from three-point range himself, but as a whole, UCLA shooting only about 33.5% from three-point range. Guy Clark has been a very hit-or-miss player. Either he gives you a really good game or he gives you absolutely nothing. You just don't know if you're going to be able to get night in, night on, and we know that with UCLA, they're going to do a nice job of being able to guard the perimeter as well. UCLA right now, 12th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Prairie View more on 345th, but I do think that with UCLA not necessarily being quite the same team that they've been down low the last few seasons, with not necessarily having anyone other than Billadu that gives you north of 5.5 rebounds per game, though Kobe Johnson, good versatility, 3.5 assists, 2.5 steals, 7.5 points, 5.3 rebounds per game. He should be able to do a nice job for this team. I do think the Prairie View going to hold in there, and I like what I'm seeing out of Prairie View right now as well. So I'm going to be writing up the points with Prairie View. Did set my total at a 147.5. I do think that the UCLA defense really slows this game down a little bit and makes it a bit more grimy. So in on the under and the points with Prairie View, and that'll wrap things up for the Tuesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. Big thanks to Matt Josephs, aka Mid-Major Matt, for joining me in live segment. If you do like hearing from his fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at unit_D1. Keep in mind, Larsium, maybe it does not matter, so as per usual, please send these into the timeline. Other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and I'm coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, your regular season and postseason. So I'm back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.